Hey pals, it's Hannah. Remember how we were doing Mythology Month way back in July last year? Well, just as we promised, we are finishing our first ever Mythology Month in January right now. This episode was recorded in July, so any references to the now released Percy Jackson show on Disney Plus are really outdated. So we don't cover anything about the show in this episode, but if you do want to hear some of our thoughts on the show, give this video a like and let us know in the comments below.
This movie could have had references to So Yesterday by Hilary Duff, like the book does, but it doesn't, and I think that's why fans disliked it. The
That's
only
really the
reason.
only reason. Yeah, nothing else was wrong or missing.
Welcome back to Not My Fantasy, the show where we explore the lore that inspires our favorite and least favorite fantasy films. I'm Cullen.
And I'm Hannah.
And today we'd love to introduce one half of the beloved YouTube channel, Overly Sarcastic Productions, Red.
Hello, I am Red. I am happy to be here to talk about this bad movie that I didn't like.
So sorry that we made you do this, but
It's fine. I knew what I was signing up for.
if you aren't familiar with Overly Sarcastic Productions, they talk a lot about mythology, history, tropes, writing. So, if you like us, you'll love them. Check them out on YouTube.
Yeah.
A ton of content. So.
Frequently used as research for this podcast.
Shucks, I do my best.
We're gathered here today to talk about a movie that kind of killed the franchise that's maybe resuscitating in some ways. But you could argue never fully died. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, 2010. That is a long title.
Yeah. Oh man. So what was everyone's exposure to the books before this movie came out? I'm curious.
Zero. I assumed they were books. I didn't see this in theaters. This also came at a time where this was before I was allowed to read Harry Potter, which is a whole bunch of my own lore that we have on this podcast. But so I just kind of assumed they were books, and I think I watched this, but it's weird, like I think I've only seen this movie once, because why else would I go back to it? But I remembered a lot from it, which was strange. Maybe there are just some things that are some casting choices that are so crazy that like I had to remember them. They are like core memories now.
I have like the same experience where I watched this movie in high school. Like I think I was sick, and like we got some videos from Blockbuster, RIP. And I watched this and was kind of like, okay. And I had never, the books, I was really on the phone with my mom today. She's like, didn't you love those books? I was like, I never read them, but I would have. But they came out when I was in middle school, but they didn't get big till I was in high school, and I was like past the age. So my cousin loved the shit out of these books. I listened to the audiobook for the first time this summer, and it was like, wow, this is great. Love this. I would have loved the shit out of this if I listened as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, I feel like I got into the books actually quite early in the game. It hadn't occurred to me, but like I feel like I picked up Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters at like a Scholastic book fair in middle school. And because I remember waiting for the Titan's Curse to come out, because I assumed it was going to be a trilogy. And then when I got to the end, I was like, wait a minute, there's more. So then I stayed tuned for the last two books. So I was like big into these books, and I liked them so much, and then the movie came out, and I was like, I can't wait to see how they do all these fun things from the book that are vital to the continued story of the franchise, and all the things that they set up that will continue on through the books that are already out, and thus the filmmakers have access to. And then they didn't do like any of them, and I thought that was weird and confusing.
this was to you what Aragon was to me.
Yeah. For me, I never read Aragon, so when I watched the movie, I was like, this is a tolerable fantasyification of the plot of Star Wars. But then the people who read the books were like, no, you don't understand. About 10% of the book isn't that. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think Percy Jackson as a book is better than Aragon, but yes, I was very disappointed. But at least Aragon gave us Avril Lavigne's "Keep Holding On." This movie doesn't have an Avril Lavigne. It did, and then the Glee cast version and the Glee Project cast version.
Deep lore. I watched so many AMVs with that. All thanks to Aragon.
All thanks to Aragon. This movie could have had references to So Yesterday by Hilary Duff, like the book does, but it doesn't, and I think that's why fans disliked it. That's only reason.
Yeah, nothing else was wrong or missing.
Wait, so there's a reference to the song by Hilary Duff.
Yes, because Grover can only play like 2 songs on his panpipe, and one is like a magical lullaby, and one is So Yesterday.
Okay,
Hilary Duff.
1, I love that. 2, I get why they didn't include it, but I wish they had come up with another timely version of like whatever was popular in 2009, 2010.
And we did get some music choices.
And we could have been so cringe.
Yeah.
Even more, I
guess
I
already
should say.
pretty cringe. Like,
Yeah.
there were like 4 or 5 licensed music songs in this, and I didn't understand the choice of any of them except for Highway to Hell, which they used far too early.
Is so on the nose, and yes, very early.
Like right after someone says, "Hey, when you're on your highway to hell, ho ho ho," and then I was like, "Oh, cool! What a funny little pop culture reference." And then they just played like a minute and a half of it. So
yeah,
weird choice.
This movie was directed by Chris Columbus. You know, Harry Potter movies, Chris Columbus. I think he was trying to not make this Harry Potter, and I think that made it worse.
Well, that's interesting because my boyfriend was like, "Oh yeah, this movie was supposed to launch like the next like Harry Potter like franchise," and I was like, "Oh well, formulaically that makes sense. Chris Columbus did the first 2 Harry Potter movies, but people are very like not happy about those movies and then the rest of them." So I don't know, but yeah, Chris Columbus.
I mean, that was what confused me too, because it's like this is tailor-made to be the next Harry Potter. This is perfect. There's a whole bunch of the books. You've got a magic setting for the kids to be like, boy, I wish I could go there and sort myself into one of these categories. That would be awesome. And they had all these books already extant, and then they were like, we're not going to do anything that we need to do if we want to do any of those books. We're not going to introduce one of the primary characters in the Sea of Monsters who shows up first in Lightning Thief. We're not going to mention the main villain at all in the entire first movie. We're not going to mention the second main villain. It's just going to be one random guy being a jerk. That's what we're going with for our franchise.
The screenplay is by Craig Titley of Scooby-Doo.
Like the
LGBT icon movie Scooby-Doo.
I actually like those movies a lot, so now I'm madder about this one being bad.
And the Cheaper by the Dozen.
Okay.
Yeah, it is based on the 2005 novel The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. The first in a long franchise of several different book series. It's like trying to figure out just how many Percy Jackson books there are is hard. Like they're still coming out. There's spin-offs. He has stuff about Norse myth, Egyptian myth, and he also has Rick Riordan Presents, where he spotlights other authors from cultures all over the world, and they tell stories about those mythologies in the same universe. So he's been praised for his ability to like adapt to modern expectations of representation and listen to marginalized voices instead of, you know, the author of Harry Potter.
She who shall not be named.
She who shall not be named. So, you know, people generally love this series and they love him. They don't really feel the same way about the movie because of the absence of the Hilary Duff song.
That's the only reason, as we all know.
Yeah. This starred Logan Lerman as Percy, Brandon T. Jackson as Grover, Alexandra Daddario as Annabeth, Sean Bean, he's Zeus,
Sean
Bean, Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, they got a lot of people to. It must have been such a hard conversation for them afterwards. Like, what do you mean they're not doing any sequels because it sucked? My character's arc doesn't start until movie 3.
Steve Coogan, Rosario Dawson. That woman makes me feel like a lesbian. Anytime I see her, I'm attracted to her in a gay way as a gay man. But yeah. Catherine Keener, Kevin McDidd, Joe Pantaleo, and Uma Thurman as Medusa. We love her. She's giving camp. Yeah.
She killed it.
Yeah. She wants to dance like Uma Thurman.
She does.
Bury me till I confess. Yeah. Rick Riordan did not like this adaptation. He sent several emails to the studio complaining about the script and the choices they made, saying it would alienate fans, especially by aging up the characters and including more like sexual content, essentially. Which
I noticed that the first time I watched the movie, but boy, is it everywhere.
And it's especially because if this book was written for 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's about 12-year-olds, it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if you aren't aware, it's similar to Harry Potter in that when the books start, the main character is 12 and so is Annabeth. So Percy and Annabeth are both little wee babs, and then they basically age up 1 year per book as they go back to camp at the end of each school year. And by the end, of course, they're all like about 17, 18. They're they've made it to adulthood and all that jazz. And then, of course, there were follow-up series that continued on from that point. But there are only 5 like core Percy Jackson books, and it was basically following that sort of Harry Potter-esque formula. But yeah, they're supposed to be like kids, and even in the later books, when they're doing sort of like awkward crush stuff, you don't get a single thing that's as raunchy as like half of the jokes in this movie. It's just not the tone of the story.
Yeah. We talked about, they age up the kids a little in Narnia, but I think we ended up cutting. I made a comment because a lot of the creatures in Narnia are very sexualized in mythology. And I was like, I feel like orgies happen in Narnia, but they happen off screen. Like, they don't do that. They're not weirdos. They're not doing that in front of these 12-year-old kids. These nymphs and satyrs do that somewhere else. So it's just not part of the story. Yeah. But this movie was like, what if it did happen on screen?
In front of these teenagers.
And like the weird thing is, like the Riordan books, the one part where he kind of does not adhere to his strict, like, I try to play it as close to the myths as possible, is when he's like, I'm not gonna get into the weird sex stuff ever. I'm not gonna do that. Like, it'll just be like, oh, the gods come to Earth and fall in love and have consensual relationships with people, and it's like, good, awesome, great, love it.
Yeah.
Good for them. Don't tell me
this is a
anything
kid's
else.
book. I am behind that.
Yeah, and like the main, like Grover is a satyr, and in Greek mythology, satyrs are notoriously horn dogs. Like, that's the one thing about them. And I kind of like that in the books, they just don't do that. They're like, this is Grover, he's a dork. And then in the movie, they were like, oh, satyrs are historically horny, you say. Yeah, we can do that. We can have Grover flirt with anything on 2 legs and boobs. That sounds awesome and fun for a teen to child audience to not understand for several years.
Aggressively flirty, not like flirting with another named female character, but like very sexual, like
just like collecting piles of women to drape off his shoulders.
Nameless daughters of Aphrodite.
Nymphs.
Random nymphs
in Vegas. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So
this it did really well in theaters, oddly enough.
So that's how it got the second movie.
The second one. It was the highest opening weekend for a fantasy film, but not including Harry Potter, Chronicles of Narnia, or Lord of the Rings.
So like what's the other fantasy?
Like all the other ones. So this was bigger than Aragon, I guess.
Wow.
Right, that's the only one it beat out was Aragon.
Bring in the parade, I guess. Jeez.
It grossed a total of $226.5 million.
Great, awesome.
So let's talk lore. So this movie is about all of Greek mythology. So let's start from we're not.
So in like 1600s-ish BCE, the ancient Greece swapped writing systems for some reason.
So yeah, that we're gonna do a briefest common knowledge recap to hint on the things that are featured in this movie, and also because as you kind of build our lore collection through our podcast, we've referenced these gods a lot. So we're just gonna do a quick, shortest of recaps. We just did Hercules. So we did just talk about the Titans. So Titans, primordial gods, kids of Gaia and Uranus, earth and sky. the youngest, Kronos, who was cut from this movie, but we will talk about because he was in the book.
They did name drop him once in the museum.
Yes.
Oh
yeah.
He ate his kids after he castrated Uranus and took over. He ate his kids so they wouldn't overthrow him. His wife got sick of it, hid the youngest kid. That kid would grow up with a goat named Amalthea. Shout out to the last unicorn. And he would overthrow Kronos and get him to throw up his siblings fully grown. And we mentioned this in the Little Mermaid episode of all things, that the gods had different weapons, like Poseidon had a trident, Zeus had a thunderbolt, Hades had a helmet of invisibility. They were made by the Cyclops. They were freed from Tartarus, the super underworld, the underworld of the underworld, and the Titans were dropped in there. So then it's the era of the 12 Olympians. Depending on which shrine you're looking at, the numbers of who's included would fluctuate. So there's like kind of like a modern standardization of who they are. And we're kind of, that's what I mean. Like we're doing the common knowledge. We're not doing like the deep sources because we'll be revisiting mythology. Yeah. Clash of the Titans and Troy are waiting for us. So.
Yeah, there is it is the modern standardization, but it's also the Roman standardization. The Romans really liked the idea of there being 12 gods. So when you start getting Romans turning up around 400 BCE, they basically start codifying like there are 12 major gods and here are all of their names. Greece and Rome both had more than 12 gods. Rome especially, they were big into having like domestic spirits and minor gods that were like groups of gods. Like there were a bunch of gods of like thieves that got kind of like consolidated into Mercury when they kind of absorbed Hermes into him. And that kind of thing. And of course in Greece there were more than 13 gods and every god had like epithets.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rome was like 12 big ones. We can put up their statues and it's fine. They won't get mad.
We're trying to summarize a very complicated living religion over many centuries. And that's something a lot of people struggle with because of like canon, the concept of canon, which comes from Catholicism, which Roman, the idea of like, this is the official lore. And that just like does not exist in many faith traditions.
Yeah.
So we kind of modernize it and we're like, these are the main ones. But yeah, there were a shit ton of gods. We have Zeus. We saw him in Hercules, God of the sky, king of the gods, lightning bolt guy. We got his wife Hera, goddess of marriage and childbirth. Also talked about her in Hercules. She's the one that took Echo's voice when we talked about Little Mermaid. She was kind of uptight, but I don't really blame her. But she did torture a lot of women, and I do blame her for that. Poseidon, god of the sea, horses, and earthquakes. He was kind of just like the wannabe Zeus. He's similar personality.
The sea and horses? Because the sea and horses don't go together. Horses are the ocean.
There's a few things there. I haven't done a ton of research in this specific dimension, but there are a lot of Greek gods that have like this sort of animal affiliation and a lot of their epithets and stuff like that. Hera and Zeus both are referred to with a lot of cow and bull symbolism.
Yeah.
Hera, one of her common descriptions is like ox eyes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, and Zeus often takes the form of a bull. Whereas Poseidon and like a stable of other gods mostly turn into horses in various contexts. There's a version of the myth of the conception of Persephone where Demeter takes the form of a horse to escape Poseidon, and Poseidon takes the form of a horse to chase her. And when she has her kid, the kid comes out as a horse initially. It's fucked. Greek mythology is really messy and nasty and weird, but yes, horses are a thing that Poseidon is a god of.
Love it.
Yeah,
he's horse girly.
He's the god of horse girls. Yeah. And so Demeter, she goddess of the earth, fertility, and agriculture. She came up in the Two Towers of all episodes. You know, we talked about Ceres and Erysichthon. So she's mostly chill unless you disrespect her and the wood nymphs or her daughter. We have Hades, god of the underworld. He wasn't usually counted as an Olympian. He was kind of cold but fair, like not evil. He wasn't like popular though, because dying isn't fun.
I have some fucking thoughts about what they did with my boy in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, we just watched Hercules again, so the attempt to demonize him is kind of to impose like a Christian worldview. It's very lazy. And he had a 3-headed dog named Cerberus. We did not make it in this movie, bizarrely. And then the sixth sibling, because they're all siblings, Hestia is the goddess of the hearth. she had a huge role in religion as like a cultural center. Like the hearth had cultural meaning, but she's not in a lot of stories because she was generally benevolent and she wasn't like attacking people, so she didn't have anything to do. Some people count Dionysus instead of her in the Olympians, and it's a modern storytelling convention that she gave up her throne to Dionysus to avoid causing trouble.
Yeah, which I believe is something that Reardon uses in the books at some point.
Yes, yeah.
Hestia does briefly show up, and she's like, yeah, when Dionysus was born and became a god, I decided to give up my spot in the big throne circle, which is cute. It's not at all precedented in Greek mythology, because Greek mythology didn't have canon or a timeline of events. So there was no, there was a time when Hestia was one of the Olympians, and now Dionysus is one of the Olympians. It's just like, oh, Dionysus is the party god, and we're all getting really into that. Get on over here, you crazy kid. So, anyway.
Yeah. Dionysus. Let's brief it. God of wine, orgies, partying, theater, madness.
Other things.
The son of Zeus and a mortal woman in the most common, iteration of the story. We have Athena, the goddess of war, wisdom, arts, and crafts. I've called her the ultimate pick-me girl boss. She was born from the head of Zeus after he swallowed her mom, the Oceanid Metis. We talked about Oceanids in Luca. We have Hephaestus, god of the forge, labor, and smithies. He was disabled, maybe kind of hates women, maybe just his mom, because she either had him with Zeus or conceived him by herself, and that was why he was deformed. And then she threw him off a cliff, off of Mount Olympus.
There's 6 different versions of that story.
Yeah.
there's ones where he's born disabled. There's ones where he becomes disabled when he is thrown off of Olympus by Hera because she thinks he's ugly. There's ones where he becomes disabled when he's thrown off Olympus by Zeus because he was defending Hera from Zeus in some context that is not explained. Both of these stories are referenced in the Iliad, mere chapters apart from each other. So,
No canon. Emphasis on the no canon thing.
No canon, yeah. Hephaestus seems to mostly kind of mind his business and just do his thing in the forges, but whenever he's forced to interact with other people, it doesn't really go well.
Yeah, no. We have Ares, the kind of violent god of war, the mean son of Zeus and Hera. We mentioned Persephone. She is not usually counted as one of the 12 Olympians, but she is a major goddess, queen of the underworld, spring, rebirth. Her and her mom were worshipped in these secret rituals called the Lucinian mysteries that kind of had a concept of rebirth and a better afterlife. And so she was both compassionate but also terrifying. We've mentioned her a few times in the Beauty and the Beast episode. She was kidnapped by Hades and trapped in the underworld either in winter or summer, depending on who's telling the story, based on a certain number of pomegranates she ate, depending on who's telling the story. And her mom punishes Earth with famine in her absence. And she did not have a lot of lovers. She was not known, in my understanding, for being particularly horny, except there was
not aggressively so. Most of her epithets were about how she was a maiden. And I believe the only times where... So this is one of those cases where, in the primary accepted understanding, Persephone and Hades are very, very monogamous. And then there are the mystery cults about their kids, and there are mystery cults about kids that they had with other people. But in the main, again, there's no canon, and it doesn't internally make sense. But there's versions where it's Persephone had this child with Zeus, but maybe Zeus was taking the form of Hades. And also, maybe when we describe Zeus of the underworld, that doesn't mean Zeus, that actually just means Hades again.
Yeah.
So... But yes, no, her characterization in this movie is awful, and I hate it, along with everything else.
Yeah, because she liked Adonis, who liked Aphrodite better, but that's almost a transplanted Sumerian myth, just dropped in. And then we have Apollo and Artemis, the twins. Apollo, the god of light, prophecy, healing, archery, music, poetry. Later, the sun, kind of a hot music frat boy. I dressed up as him for Halloween once, so cancel me because he kind of sucks. But I was 12 and I was going by that version of things.
The PG version where it's all fine and good.
Yeah, the son of Zeus and a Titan goddess Leto. I'm going to mention because it comes up. He had an oracle, the Oracle of Delphi, where there's this priestess, the Pythia, who would give her prophecies, lasting from roughly 1400 BC to 4th century AD. So a very long, this was done a way long before Chicken Little was released. But the last prophecy is dubious. According, they say like, oh, Apollo's gone, no one takes care of the temple, and some people think the last prophecy of Delphi is like a Christian thing that they wrote and like put in. So he had an oracle. We mentioned it in Cupid when we talked about Cupid and Psyche. People would go there, and the priestess would like speak his prophecies to the people. And he had a twin sister. We mentioned her a few times, goddess of the hunt, you know, maidens, animals, later the moon. We talked about her in La Belle and la Bête. She hunted with her nymph friends. One of the worst parts of having a podcast is realizing that at any time your mom could look up you saying Naiad serving cunt with Artemis, and that's just out there.
Well, I mean, she could also look up the Gods of Egypt episode and how many times we say the phrase. So that's also out there.
Sometimes people are like, why don't you cover more Egyptian mythology on the channel? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Can't imagine what might be making me uncomfortable about almost everything that I have to read about.
I would like to monetize some of my videos, thanks.
Yeah, it's like, look, trust me, I don't want to do it, and you don't want to know, all right?
You don't want to hear it.
I'm doing this for you.
And then we have Hermes, the god of messengers, travel, magic, cunning, luck, stealing words. He's kind of a catch-all god. He does a lot. And he's a fun little shit. That's how I kind of characterize him. And then Aphrodite, who may or may not be a child of Zeus. She's either the child of Zeus and this like oak tree prophecy goddess Dione, or she was born from the castrated genitals of Uranus in the sea foam. Goddess of love, beauty, and sex. We've talked about her several times. She comes up a lot, especially when we did Cupid and Psyche. She loved to laugh. She could also be kind of mean, but sometimes she's nice.
You said she loved to laugh as if you're reading her obituary.
On the beach.
Yeah. But they called her laughter loving. That was one of her common epithets. So
yeah.
Live, laugh, love lady.
She's the live, laugh, love.
The OG.
In the Odyssey, it said she was married to Hephaestus and she cheated on him with Ares, and he made this like invisible spine net that he threw on them, and then everyone could go look at them naked about to have sex or having sex, and that was like his revenge. Now this marriage is very common in pop culture because it's in the Odyssey, which is like the thing people read in school, but it doesn't seem to be too widespread religiously. Like it's not referenced in a lot of other stories, and Hephaestus is mentioned as being married to one of the Graces. So you know, again, no canon. She has a son who usually her son, Eros. We talked about him a lot in Cupid and Psyche, obviously. The son of Aphrodite and maybe Ares or maybe Hermes. And then I do want to mention, because it comes up in the book, Pan, the half-goat god of nature and kind of everything, because Pan, you know, means kind of all. Shout out to all the pansexuals. They're not attracted to pans. They're attracted to everyone. Not literally everyone, but possibilities. He was the son of Hermes, and there's a story that the book references where it was around when Christ was born. People heard people shouting, the great god Pan is dead. It's kind of like, the gods are dead. But people say this story could be a reference to people mourning for Adonis, Aphrodite's dead lover. And that was like a noted ritual, and that's referenced in the Bible of something that like women would do. So those are our main gods. Demigods, we're gonna tell their stories when we get there. Clash of the Titans, Perseus, Achilles. We've talked about Hercules. I did also dress as Perseus for Halloween once, and my mom made a Medusa head, and that was cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Okay, that's metal. That's metal as fuck.
We had it in our like cupboard in the basement, so if you opened it, the Medusa head was staring at you.
Love that.
In the movie, how cool.
Yeah. I invented it. They stole it. And we're gonna do a quick hunt through the monsters. We got Chiron the centaur. We talked about centaurs in Narnia. Chiron was nice. Most centaurs weren't. Furies, spirits from Hades who punish wrongdoers for doing unholy things like blasphemy and matricide. Similar but different to harpies, which we talked about in The Last Unicorn. Minotaurs, the son, we mentioned these in Narnia as well, the son of a queen and a bull. he was kept in a labyrinth until Ariadne helped Theseus kill him in kind of the proto-Hunger Games. Medusa, we talked about her a few times, a beautiful woman cursed by Athena to be ugly because Poseidon either slept with or assaulted her in Athena's temple, and instead of lashing out at Poseidon, Athena cursed Medusa. Athena is not nice to women.
Yeah, again, no canon. This
No
is the word that
canon.
comes up in Ovid's Metamorphoses, which is a book series that really has an axe to grind against Athena specifically, because that's also where you get the Arachne myth. Where
Yeah,
she's
and that's where
jealous.
I'm getting, yeah.
It's like somehow a mortal managed to be better at art than the goddess of art. That, sure, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
noted writer Ovid, sure, I
Ovid,
believe that that's
yeah.
a thing that you think can happen.
Because in like the Perseus story, she is a very benevolent figure. Like in a lot of stories, she's like helpful.
Yeah, Athena is primarily a guide for heroes. She shows up,
Yeah.
gives them advice, usually in disguise. She'll give them weapons, armor, stuff like that sometimes. And the
Yeah.
whole story of Medusa is very weird because Ovid's version of, oh, she was once a mortal woman, completely normal and fine and inoffensive, and then bad things happened to her and the gods cursed her to be this monster, is like, I'm not going to say he made it up wholesale, but it's not the standard canon before Ovid wrote it down.
Yeah.
The Gorgon sisters were always monsters in most versions. They were just regular monsters. I think they get listed in the Titanomachy as like, hey, here are some monsters that we know about. The three Gorgon
Yeah.
sisters, whoa. And the idea that she was a helpless and innocent mortal woman cursed by a jealous Athena or whatever is weird, but on brand for Ovid. So, but
And
people
it's-
love that version. It's more interesting than she was just a monster.
Yeah, I think that's why it sticks in the cultural memory. And like we could do an entire podcast just on Greek mythology, but we talk a lot about how stories evolve with cultural tastes. I mean, the whole journey Sleeping Beauty went through. It's a lot. We have satyrs. We talked about them in Narnia. Wild goat guys, nymphs. I love a nymph. We have the Hydra. We talked about the Hydra last episode. In the book, there's Echidna, who's like this primordial mother of monsters, and the Chimera, part lion, part goat, part snake, her kid. And then we have Charon, the ferryman of the underworld. And so you pay him with a coin that people put under your tongue. That's part of funeral rites. That's what Antigone wanted to do in the play Antigone. Yeah. So that's all of Greek mythology. There's
nothing left. No more worlds to conquer, baby.
Yeah. But I just wanted to give because we have a movie and a book that we're talking about, so I wanted to give the quickest context. But let's get into this beautiful film.
Those are two things I would never use to describe this movie. This open picture.
This thing that happened.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We start with a giant Poseidon. I don't know why they always want to make giant gods in these movies, because he walks out of the water giant and the fisherman's like, what? And then he water morphs small, and I'm like, why don't you just start human size?
Start small.
There are so many things that's wrong with this opening scene compared to the book. One of them being that throughout the movie there does not appear to be the mist, which is the hand wavy thing in the books for why people aren't constantly freaking out about gods and monsters showing up, that there's this supernatural force that permeates the world that it's kind of a don't notice me field. So anything weird that happens that's too disruptive will register to mortals as something scary is happening, but they'll rationalize it as something that makes sense. So when Percy pulls out his sword, oftentimes they see it as that kid's got a weapon, so it's probably a gun. And when the gods turn up, they can just look like whatever, or monsters will just look like weird people until they reveal themselves, and demigods can kind of see through the mist, but not perfectly all the time. And that's just not in the movie at all. They just don't explain that. It seems like mortals can fully see everything that's happening all the time.
There's a lot of world building in the book that doesn't go here, and I know that you gotta cut stuff, you gotta trim world building, but I think the world building in the Percy Jackson book, at least the one I read, is very strong in that it's not overly complicated, but it just makes everything make sense enough that I'm like, okay, I buy the story and the world I'm in. I don't know how that goes as the franchise goes on, if it gets too complicated, but it seems simple, a foundation, not a complex.
Yeah. It becomes a little more difficult when it starts bumping up against other pantheons, because there is no coherent way to combine all religions that have ever existed in the world and make them all true forever. without having very awkward conversations about that. And that's around where I sort of stopped reading the books, is when they started going into the Roman series, where it's like, by the way, the Roman gods are also real, and they're kind of the same as the Greek gods, but not exactly. And I was like, okay, I'm cool.
I'm done.
I'm good. I'm done. I'm no longer the same age as the protagonists. I'm kind of already out of this anyway. The Percy Jackson books specifically hold it together very cleanly. They basically take concepts out of Greek mythology and they turn it into a hard magic system that works pretty well.
Yeah. So he walks up to the top of the Empire State Building to talk to Sean Bean, podcast alum. He says, "I'm Zeus. I'm angry. My lightning is missing. It better be returned by summer solstice or it's war."
Feels like an overreaction. Just gonna say it.
Zeus is a giant man baby, honestly. This is very
Yeah.
on brand for him. So
Yeah, but this opening scene is not in the book at all, and
No.
so it
Mm.
it spells it out. We don't need it. I'm like, this time could have gone to something else.
it's a loose adaptation of a thing that is in the book, where Percy has a dream that he doesn't fully understand, where he sees these two like ancient Greek looking guys, and Toga's like wrestling on a beach with like the ocean going crazy on one side and storm clouds roiling overhead, and one of them is shouting at the other one like, give it back, like a kid that's gotten their ball taken away or something. And Percy's like, wonder what that meant, and then he goes to school. So this was just like, no, that literally happens, but much less interesting to look at. Just a lot of fucking standing and talking in this movie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We open on I want to say Charlie from Perks of Being a Wallflower, but Percy Jackson sitting in a pool because he can breathe
God.
underwater.
For the opening credits, right?
Yeah.
He's just sitting there and we're zooming.
And I think the
out
actor
in.
is 18 at the time. I like did the math. I looked up how old he was now, and I'm like, I still don't love having to spend so much time with a shirtless young boy.
This is still
but
uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
marginally less illegal than it would have been, but like, whoa.
But
he
because
looks
also
young
looks very
too.
boyish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
He's
like,
a very boyish looking guy.
I remember the first time I watched this movie, this was where I was like, oh no, it's the opening scene and I already don't like this, because it's like there's a tone that the book set that the movies flagrantly ignore that I'll get into more later, but like this specific one is like Percy sitting at the bottom of a swimming pool for 7 straight minutes and nobody thinks that's weird, and I'm like, that is almost physically impossible, like except for like pearl divers who've trained for this their entire lives, and
Yeah.
nobody's even gonna think to comment on that or bully Percy for being the weird kid who sits at the bottom of the swimming pool for 7 fucking minutes at a time and makes everybody think he's probably dead.
it's like part of the aging up of the characters, and just the books have kind of not comedic, but like a kind of a tongue-in-cheek, like kind of a witty, like, whoa, but because it doesn't work when you age up the characters, then they have to change the entire tone of and like the actions don't make as much sense, like his relationship with his mom, I think, takes a big hit because of the changes, and we'll
Yeah.
get there.
And also, like book Percy is too smart and too scrappy to do a lot of the stuff that like movie Percy does casually, because he's like
Yeah.
completely unsubtle, and like it's like book Percy is like a sassy little kid who monologues a lot of stuff, but only says like things that he, either he'll like snark something because he's got ADHD and no impulse control, or like because he's like, you know what, this is gonna get me in trouble, but at this point I don't care, whatever. Whereas like this Percy will be like, you can't talk to my mom that way, abusive father figure. And it's like, look, I understand he's got a spine, but like the tone of the book, the world, the picture it paints of the world of 12-year-old Percy Jackson is not this like fun, quippy, everything's good and I get to be as sassy as I want and nothing ever goes wrong and I'm the hero of camp. It's like bad and sad, and he's constantly like tired and getting bullied and stressed, and that's
Yeah.
nowhere in this movie. And it just
Yeah. I mean, the relationship you would have with an abusive father figure is also just kind of different when you look at a 18, 16-year-old compared to a 12-year-old boy. And I think that's why that relationship, everything with his home life, is so weird in the movie.
Yeah.
But so he's at his school with his no homo bestie Grover. Part of me thinks they made Grover super horny so he wouldn't come across as gay. Like they wouldn't have a Sam Frodo thing because he's like, I'm your protector later on.
Yeah.
Which I still don't think most people would have interpreted it that way, but I wonder. We get the great line, it's like high school without the musical. And I'm back in 2010 when I heard that. I'm like, wow.
Wow, what a timely fucking reference. You know, high school, that thing we all went through. You know that movie some of us saw.
He's, he has ADHD and dyslexia, so he's bullied by his teacher, Miss Dodds. He goes home to Sally, his boring mom, and Gabe, his gross abusive stepdad. We're gonna do a check-in later where we talk about
what a misuse of Catherine Keener. Like she is like a powerhouse actor, and like this is the stuff they give her. And I don't know how close it is to the book, but I'm like, but Catherine Keener.
They do like one change in the movie that takes away a little bit of Sally's edge that she has in the books. I'll get to that when we get to it. But she's interesting. In the book, she kind of seems like, oh, she's like this kind of battered housewife in the first book. And it's like, oh boy, but it's like she's got a fucking iron spine in there. She's like, I'm going to do literally whatever is necessary to keep Percy safe. And they mentioned it in the movie. It's like, oh, she marries this gross, awful, abusive, terrible person because he is so disgusting that it actually makes monsters stay away from Percy. Like, that's the only reason she puts up with this man. And when he gets out of her life after the events of the first book, and she kind of gets to sort of come into her own as a person, and Percy's off on his own more, and she's stressing less about his, life being in danger while he doesn't even know who he is, she takes a lot more control of her life, and she's, it's the difficulties of being a single mom kind of looped into like how to take your life back after the kid grows up. And so she's great, but she does nothing in this movie except exposit and occasionally be blocked by invisible walls.
That's all she does. And I love
no, I can't get on this elevator. I don't know why it let me into the elevator in the first place.
I loved her in the book, and she's so wet blanket. And then he's all like, I'm just gonna spell out, I hate Gabe, he's abusive, and I have ADHD and dyslexia.
Yeah, the dialogue in this movie is on the nose at times. Just really trying to explain in the clearest possible terms what exactly is happening.
And I get it to the extent in that there's a lot going on in the book. So if I have to adapt that book to a 2-hour movie, like there's a lot of set changes and like there's a lot of information to get across. So I get that that's difficult, but I still think like it's the ADHD and dyslexia. It's like that. Yes, that is.
My dyslexia thing's getting worse. I think it's the ADHD. And it's like, good. It's good that he has both of those things that he does in the book, but also, my God, no other way you could have gotten those across. But I do like how they visually represented the dyslexia in the movie. I actually thought that was
good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just consistently a good effect.
Those two things aren't intrinsically linked. They can be separate. They're not caused by each other. And I was like,
this Percy is such an unsubtle brick of a man that it's just like you could believe almost anything was going on under the hood and it wouldn't change his behavior at all.
Yeah, no, he's just like going through the motions. They go to the Met, he's listening to his earbuds like a super cool guy. I remember, listening to my earbuds like that in like that time and being like, I'm so cool. I have earbuds in. And like, he looks like every like, I'm the hottest boy in 7th grade, like that aesthetic. I remember the hair and the jeans and like that whole aesthetic. He's attacked by, they do some Greek mythology facts. He's attacked by I don't think they did differentiate if she's a harpy or fury. Yes.
She's a
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so they're given all those, facts about Greek mythology. And he's like, okay, what's his name? Chiron or Mr. Brunner.
Mr. Brunner.
Mr. Brunner.
Yeah. He is like focusing so hard on Percy. And he's like, yeah, we're talking about this story. You and this protagonist have something in common. And he's, he does his Greek dyslexia thing. And he goes, Perseus. And so it made me think, okay, I have a big question here. Has this myth happened? The Perseus myth, has it happened in the past? Now this is just part 2. We're getting the new demigod Perseus.
Yes, that's a good question.
Or was that a prophecy and now it's coming true.
No, it's an explicit reference to a thing that in the universe of Percy Jackson canonically happened in the past. It doesn't come up in the movie because it would be too poignant and smart, but it's canonical in the books that Sally named Percy after Perseus because Perseus is one of the only demigods in mythology who has a good life and a happy ending.
Yeah.
He doesn't die horribly. He doesn't turn out to be a dick. He kills the monster. He saves his mom and the kingdom, and everything works out great for him. And
He
she was
marries
like,
a princess.
Yeah. So
His tragic ending is he accidentally kills the dad that tried to murder his mom.
Yeah,
like he kills his grandfather.
His grandfather without knowing who he was. He kills the guy who threw his mom into a chest with her baby. So like,
Boo.
Yeah, doesn't get into any trouble for it. So she was like, if I name my kid after this guy.
Yeah, it's they also don't explain because like Medusa's around, right? They don't explain that in the book. They explain that monsters like regenerate.
In the book, monsters can't die for permanently. Like they don't have souls exactly, so they like crumble to dust and then they reform and just come back. They don't bring this up in the movie at all, even though it'd be relevant. But it's like, the Minotaur was killed, the Medusa was killed, and then they came back eventually.
They came back, yeah.
So the big monsters can't stay dead. But they just don't mention that in the movie, even though it's an important fact that they could have put in during all the fucking scenes of walking and talking.
So much walking and talking.
God, don't even get me started.
So yeah, the fury of Miss Dodds attacks him. Chiron, Mr. Brunner throws him a pen. That's a sword. And he fights it off. And then they do we'll get to our first check-in in a moment. So they're like, okay, you need to take him to the camp. And they go to the apartment where Gabe and his friends are playing poker and they're being gross and smelly and she has to get them beers. And they're like, we got to take Percy to the camp. And she's like, okay, let's go. And he's like, you can't go anywhere. And then Grover hits him with his crutch. And they're driving in the car. They're attacked by the Minotaur as they start to explain, oh, stuff is happening. And he's like, Grover, why are you taking your pants off? Why do you have donkey legs? And he's like, I'm part goat. And they fight the Minotaur. The mom dies pretty unceremoniously. And
she explodes.
Because she can't walk into the camp. She has an invisible wall.
Invisible wall number one.
She doesn't have enough experience points, I guess. She didn't pay for the DLC.
She didn't pay for the DLC.
So then he kills the Minotaur. So the reason I'm going through this so fast is because we also have to do like a check-in and be like, well, how did this happen in the book? And there's so many differences. So I'm like, we got to quickly get through like all of Act 1. So in the book, Percy is at a boarding school for kids who are struggling. He often clashes with bullies. Miss Dodds is a fury who's been bothering him. And then after the fight, they're all like, there's never been a Miss Dodds. Like, you made that all up.
It's this really weird, like, I couldn't understand why this made me so, like, frustrated when I read it the first time. Because I was like, what do you mean? She was totally there. I read the book. But, like, so Mr. Brunner and Grover do, like, bust in to help him. And Chiron throws him a pen. And the pen turns into a sword. And he slices his math teacher in half. And she explodes and crumbles to dust. And he's like, what was that? And then Brunner and Grover just straight up gaslight him about it. They're like, what do you mean? We've never had a teacher named Mrs. Dodds. And like everyone else is also doing that. Like all the other students, like whenever he's like, man, just like Mrs. Dodds, am I right? They're all like, what are you fucking talking about? But with Grover and like Brunner, he can tell that they're lying to him. Like they'll react just a little bit wrong. And he's like, I don't understand why they're like this, but I also don't know what's happening because I'm 12. And they straight up gaslight him about it for the rest of the school year. And then when it hits summer vacation, then it's like, we got to get this kid to camp like right the fuck now because things are already going bad. Like monsters are already starting to be able to find him and things are going worse. And the movie accelerates the timeline of that by being like, no, we got to get him out of here right now. It doesn't matter that the school year's not over. And this is a change that a lot of adaptations do. There's a Lightning Thief musical and it does the exact same thing. It's like, all right, cool. Let's get the fuck out of here. We're not going to lie to you, whatever.
Yeah.
But the books really keep Grover and Brunner trying to like keep Percy in the dark for as long as possible. because it seems like it's more dangerous for demigods if they know exactly what's happening, but they all have to find out eventually, or they will just get eaten by something horrible when they're like 6. So
Yeah, it's not fun to be a demigod, as they say in the musical.
and the opening line of the books, it's like, you don't want to be a demigod. Being a demigod sucks. Stop sorting yourself into houses. I promise it's not worth it. And everyone's like, cool. It's just this movie does not just subscribe to the theory that being a demigod is nasty, brutish, and short. It says that being a demigod is awesome, and all of your demigod friends will think you're the coolest, hottest guy on campus. So that's a change.
Yeah, that's Hollywood for you. And so there's this whole thing where Grover's supposed to take him back to the city, and then he runs away from Grover, and he goes to see his mom. And there's a lot more to their relationship. There's a lot more of how he doesn't understand why she's with Gabe, how she loves blue food.
Oh yeah, one personality trait that they just didn't put in the movie at all.
Yeah, and it's especially because he's younger, like it's just there's a lot of warmth to that relationship where like he's not an easy kid, but like she loves him so much, and because he got expelled because he was struggling with his grades, and they're gonna go to this cabin that they always go to, where it's like that's where she met his dad that she never talks about. And so they're gonna go to the cabin, and Grover finds them and is like, things are going down, and then they go off and get attacked by the Minotaur. So there's more of a slow build, which has the gaslighting disadvantage, but the advantage of we get more of his relationship with his mother, which is a central motivator to the story. So you need to feel the love.
Yeah, because his mother being stuck in the underworld / presumed dead is like his entire motivation for the book, because everything else is God stuff that he has no context for and doesn't care about. It's like, oh no, my absentee father might get in trouble. Boo-hoo, but my mom I actually care about. So like that makes sense. And to their credit, they do kind of stick with that in the movie a little bit. Like it's pretty clear, you know.
It's just not as effective.
It's not, because their version of Sally is basically just an exposition fountain, and then she explodes. So whatever.
Yeah.
Also, the fight with the Minotaur is like a lot more like terrifying and like desperate in the book, because he's A, 12, B, doesn't know what the fuck is happening, C, just watched his mother die in front of him, so that's great.
He recovers really quickly on that front in the movie.
Yeah, like in the fight in the movie, he like gets thrown into a tree once, and then he very slowly grabs the Minotaur's horn, and then he stabs the Minotaur, and the Minotaur dies. So great work, kiddo. But like
then he just passes out.
Yeah, then he's like, oh, that really took it out of me. But gonna sleep for 72
tired.
hours. Whereas in the book, it's like, I'm amazed he's not fucking dead. Like, this is a baby, and he's fighting a monster, and like, and everyone is super impressed, but also like kind of jealous of him, because it's like, oh, he got to fight a monster. We've been doing all this training, but we don't get to fight monsters. And he's like, why are you jealous of this? What's wrong with you people? None of that subtlety makes it into the movie, because honestly, all the fight choreography, it kind of felt like they were really struggling to make it convincing. Just that the VFX struggled with the monsters, and then the fight choreography struggled with the human characters, and it just doesn't look good when anything is happening other than the walking and talking that makes up the vast majority of this movie's runtime.
Yeah. Just the fight scenes aren't fun. You know, you can have a good fight scene, but like this movie doesn't have them. It's just like I'm like, I check out.
We have the technology, but no.
Everything feels really slow.
Yeah. Not just the fight scenes either.
Yes. Yeah.
So back to the movie, he wakes up in a hospital full of other injured people.
This game is so dangerous.
So dangerous.
Grover's like, okay, you're a demigod, your mom's dead. The reason you have dyslexia is because your brain is hardwired for ancient Greek. And the reason you have ADHD is because you have like monster spidey senses. Reflexes. Yeah.
I mean, that's straight out of the book. And actually, that part's very sweet, because the reason Reardon did that, if I recall correctly, it's because his kid had both dyslexia and ADHD. And he was like, my kid doesn't have any heroes to look up to that are like them. So I'm just going to make one. And it's like, oh, that dyslexia, it's because your brain is just, it's built different, and that ADHD is how you do karate good. And the kid's like, yeah. And I don't know, I thought that was really cute.
I think it's fun, you know. I think it's just like, especially for that age, you're just to like celebrate the things that make you different. And yes, ADHD isn't monster fighting reflexes, but at that age, it just needs to be about like learn to accept yourself, and then you'll get into all the other stuff.
And also like the theme that like every demigod has things that they are really, really good at and a lot of things that they're not good at. And it's about finding, the things that click for you. That really does work for a lot of neurodivergent kids to be like, I can't fucking focus on this class or this class, but this one I get. And it's like, yeah, that. So, kind of turning the demigod power set into basically like, what's the thing that makes your brain go click is great. That's awesome. Like when I read these books, I didn't even know I had ADHD. And I was like, that's cute. Won't examine that for a while. And now it's like, oh, hell yeah. Oh, man.
Grover describes Camp Half-Blood as very Ren Fair, and I would agree in that it's a very boring version of this world, which, I mean, Camp Half-Blood isn't Hogwarts in like this magical staircase. It is a little more like grungy. Yeah.
But it is a little weird because they kind of amp up the like retro fantasy aesthetic in the camp from where it is in the book. Because in the book, it's like you get a bright orange t-shirt that says Camp Half-Blood, and that's your official uniform. And you get a bead necklace with a special bead on it for every year that you survive the nightmarish tribulations of being a demigod baby that all monsters are trying to eat. And they do camp activities and like s'mores and stuff. And there's a climbing lava. It's like an actual summer camp, but ancient Greek and for heroes, so it's a little bit more dangerous. And it's got this cool vibe. And then you come to the movie and it's like, it looks like a Ren Fair. Everyone's wearing really cheap looking leather armor. It's baffling. And it doesn't feel like they have armor in the books, because it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna throw that over your bright orange camp t-shirt. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That taps into my repressed childhood memories of going to summer camps and having the fun t-shirt.
The production designer is like, orange t-shirts are lame.
Yeah, they're trying to make it
not
cool.
Lame. Really nasty looking armor that looks like it came from Party City. Hey.
Yes.
It was very, very weird.
I love that he was like, how do you wear this stuff? It's so heavy. I was like, no, it's not. Percy, you're a liar. That is the lightest thing I've ever seen.
It was giving
fully plastic.
It was giving we have Aslan's camp at home. Like that was the energy.
Oh my God. And like it's like half of the fun of an urban fantasy setting is that sort of juxtaposition between modern and fantastical, and half the fun of the Percy Jackson books is like Grover is like wearing these big oversized caps because his horns are growing in and he has to hide them, and he's like trying to find pants that fit over his goat butt, and like Chiron kind of always looks like a nice, professorial tweed jacket type, but his bottom half is a horse. Like that's cool. And then
how does he sit in a wheelchair with a horse ass?
That's kind
magic.
It's a magic.
Okay, it's a magic blanket on his legs.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
So that part I kind of like, but the movie really glosses over it.
Because they also have Grover hasn't earned his horns yet. Yeah. I think in the book, from what I remember, it was like a satyr council. It wasn't like a physical thing. His horns were growing in because he was young, but like it was like a thing where it's like he wants to become a searcher so he can search for the god Pan who's been missing. And it's like you have to prove yourself before you can do that. And it's less of every time a bell rings, a satyr gets its horn.
I didn't even get that part in the movie because I was so used to the part in the book that made sense, where it's just how Grover grows up. Like, because there was this interesting little like nugget in the books of like Grover ages weirdly by human standards because he's not human. So like Percy notes like Grover must have been held back a few years because he's really gangly and he's got like the beginnings of like teenager acne and like beard stubble, and I'm 12, so clearly we're not the same age, and like it's just this little thing that like Grover sort of grows up at a slightly weird pace, and it it shows through in comparison to the normal human school system. And that was another bit that contributed to the general world building of like, hey, when the magical fantasy world and the human world bump up against each other, things get awkward and uncomfortable for the people involved because the worlds don't know how to interact with each other. And it contributed to the sort of grungy, uncomfortable feeling of like, hey, look, some of this would be cool, but a lot of this would be a living nightmare. And I actually believe that being a demigod is not all fun and games. And the movie was like, what's that, fun and games? We've got those.
Capture the flag.
That's from the book, but it's a lot more violent in the book.
We got Annabeth. She's a 2010s action girl boss. If like the cardboard like baseline version. She
doesn't talk for the first, 10 minutes that we know her as a character. Even we're interacting with her through Percy. She is just looked at, and I hate it.
So dirty.
she fights good with her hair down. I ever since someone pointed this out to me when I was younger, I will, whenever there's an action girl in a movie and her hair's down, it's like, because I remember ex-girlfriend was like, I played soccer. You had to put your hair up. You couldn't just let it fly around.
And play Sims 4 and I gotta put my hair up. Like, there's no way. Like, I can't do anything with my hair down.
You turn around too quickly and it's like, oh, I'm blind now. Cool, awesome.
Yeah, I'm dead.
So it didn't even occur to me that if you just watched the movie, you wouldn't know this from the books. Annabeth's whole thing is that she is insufferable and brilliant. She's a child of Athena. She's really smart. She's also a good fighter, but mostly she's a smart fighter. She has a cap that turns her invisible, and she uses that for stealth and backstabs and stuff like that.
She's much more of a Hermione than a Katniss, I would say, on the scale. Like, I think, I don't think she's in the book, I don't think she's like a Hermione clone. No. But like, and their relationship is much more like two 12-year-olds who are like angsty towards each other, and they're like friends, but they pretend to hate each other, and it's like, and so she's not she's not bullying him. She's helping. She's the one who like showing him the ropes along with Grover.
She's not bullying him. In fact, when he wakes up in the cabin thing, when he's his mom has just died and he's been unconscious for 3 days, the first thing he hears is Annabeth saying, "You drool when you sleep," and he's like, "Oh no, I've embarrassed myself in front of a girl." And then they just have this kind of like adorably antagonistic dynamic of these two dorks who like each other and think they're interesting, but like also don't really know how to act around each other. So when he wakes up and it's just Grover being like, "What's up, bro? Let me give you the grand tour." "Oh, her? She'd kick your ass, bro." I'm like, they're supposed to like be friends.
Yeah, they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be friends, and she's supposed to be like the kind of the teacher's pet. Like they always have her help with stuff at camp.
So that's interesting because the person in the movie doesn't have a personality.
No,
or much of an intelligence.
No, because what they did is they took a character from the books and they killed her. They got rid of her. They pretended she didn't exist until they needed her for Sea of Monsters, and they put her personality in Annabeth instead. Because in the books, there's this character called Clarice. She is a daughter of Ares. She's described as being like very, large and strong by like middle schooler standards, and kind of ugly and like mean and a bully. Yeah. And she, like, Annabeth is like, "What's up, seaweed brain? You're a dork. Our parents don't like each other anyway. I'm ready to die for you now." And then Clarice is like, "Oh, I can't believe you lucky punk. You got to fight a monster literally on your first day, and now everyone thinks you're so cool. I'm gonna stick you upside down in this toilet. Good thing you can't possibly have water powers because we don't know what god is your parent for the entire like first quarter of the book." And she's just there to be like the stock bully character that's kind of like, "Hey guys, this camp isn't really all that different from that like boarding school Percy got shipped off to. There's still bullies and assholes." And in the capture the flag thing, Clarice and her buds like jump him, and the whole confrontation by the river is like with her. So combining her bully personality with female lead / future love interest character is a baffling decision.
It's such a strange choice, because I was like, wait, she's the Clarice. And there's also like Grover wants to hang out with the daughters of Aphrodite in their bikinis, and you're like, is this movie not for children?
This movie's also aggressively heterosexual because there are children of Aphrodite of all genders, so No, Aphrodite only has girls.
Women can only have daughters and men can have boys. That's the logic.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happens.
How it works. I've seen the Descendants.
Oh my god, it's such a weird, and like they got rid of everything in her personality that was interesting. Like Annabeth wants to be an architect in the books, and she wants to like she's got like the heroic flaw of hubris. She thinks that she's so smart that she can do anything. And when that goes out of control, it's like, I could even be better than the gods, and she has to like beat that down with a stick all the time. And this Annabeth is just like, "What's up? I'm bored. Let's do the plot of the movie."
I'll be there. It's just the
after
camp
I kick your ass.
The camp
after
has
I like stab you a bunch for no reason.
Yeah. The camp also just has a lot of people. It made me think of Disney Descendants because the way they're like, "I'm so and so, son of so and so." It's just like in Disney Descendants when they're like, "Hi, I'm Dopey's kid," and before you can think, wait, Dopey's had
Dopey
sex,
fucks.
and they like move on, and then you're like, "What?"
This is like I mentioned it briefly, but like one of the big things that they completely ignore at the beginning of the book is that nobody's supposed to know who Percy's dad is.
No, that's
like,
a huge.
It's a huge plot point that like a lot of kids, they come to camp because they know they're a demigod, but unless
They
their
don't
parent
know.
chooses to claim them with like a magical symbol floating over their head, the parent might never claim them, and then they go in the Hermes cabin with all the rest of the trash.
Yeah.
And it's a huge problem. It becomes a theme. Like at the very end of the series, Percy like gets all the gods together and is like, "You better start fucking claiming your children. I swear to God."
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's a huge.
That would have made Percy so much more interesting because he's not interesting in this movie.
No, because in the scene when he gets jumped in the river and like the river responds and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Percy has water powers. That's cool. And like everyone's staring at him and he kind of looks up and there's like a glowing trident spinning over his head and they're like, oh shit, he's a son of Poseidon. Well, this is bad for reasons the movie also will not get into or even mention, despite being critical to the plot of the series. Whatever.
Yeah, it's just.
Fucking fine. It's cool. It's fine.
Yeah, this is the Camp Half-Blood is where things really are going off the rails.
The
And
Mrs.
so-
Dodds scene, I was almost like, oh, maybe I only remember this movie being bad because, I don't know, I had bad taste or something. But no, I was correct the whole
You were
time.
correct.
Stupid wrong.
We learned anything today because Chiron just takes him to this cabin and he's like, this is your Poseidon house. They don't explain the concept of them having cabins based on their parents.
No.
They just take him to the Poseidon cabin. They're like, your dad is Poseidon. Here's a trident. Now it's time for capture the flag. They don't explain any of. We'll get to. Okay, let me quickly finish the Camp Half-Blood and we'll do our check-in. So
Right.
they do capture the flag. We meet Luke, who's like
Boo,
the son of
so
Hermes.
boring.
I texted Hannah, I was like, the actor in the audiobook is in the person reading every single piece of dialogue gave a better performance of Luke than this full actor whose job was just to be Luke. Like I felt more for that betrayal having just for the voice act, the audiobook.
My
than,
theory is all of the acting is so bad because they didn't know what they wanted the tone of the movie to be
yes.
when they went into production, and then editing was like, let's put some stuff together to give it somewhat of a cohesive tone,
something.
and they failed still because
Yeah.
they just didn't know.
I
because
forgot
he
Annabeth's other
delivers-
personality trait. Sorry, go ahead.
He delivers like a really stupid joke. He's like, do you still have your wheelchair to Chiron?
Oh, because
And he's like,
Percy's
'cause
gonna need it.
Percy doesn't have a helmet.
And
haha.
there are, I'm pretty sure I heard crickets. That was so bad. And he's like, I'm just joking, lighten up, kid. And it's like, bro, get the fuck away from me.
And Luke in the book is like 21. They like describe that
Okay.
he's like a counselor.
Yeah,
and so
Luke
he's
has been there for a while.
Okay.
And Percy looks up to him because he's a 12-year-old boy, and here's this
Mhm.
nice, friendly, like cool 21-year-old dude. And it's like, I want to, and so it has
There's
much
shit about Luke in the books that make him interesting.
yeah, so they do the capture the flag, and they just Annabeth takes on the role of Clarice, and she's just gonna straight up murder this kid.
Yeah.
And it's implied, I guess, maybe she knew he had water powers,
Mm.
but he just heals, and then they all let him. He fights, and they basically just
They
let
let
him grab,
They just fucking stand around.
and he just goes like, "I won." It's the
He's
ultimate.
like, yes, like
They-
waving a flag at Pride.
They fanficked it. They
They
turned it
fanficked
into.
it was
into, like,
fun.
a
Everybody
bad-
clapped. Yeah.
Yeah, not even a fanfic. It's it's a Tumblr story.
That
Like,
woman was so shocked. She was speechless after I destroyed her with facts and logic. And I marched right up to that flag and I took it off and everybody clapped. And then they carried me home on their fucking shoulders. God damn it. The tone of the book is so bleak and depressing and like, oh my God, we're all so tired all the time and stressed. And it's hard being a 12-year-old when things are trying to murder you for no reason. And then the movie is like, and everybody clapped. Welcome to Camp Half-Blood. We're going to train you to be president someday. Woo! No! It's literally Camp Half-Blood or get eaten by something you can't even comprehend. It's fine.
so yeah, he has water powers. So this is the check-in. So we've kind of talked a lot about
Oh my God.
the differences. So Annabeth, she's a friend and an ally. She's looking for a kid of the big three to go on a quest. She wants to leave camp. She spent most of her life at camp. She wants to go on a quest. The big three, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, are not supposed to have kids anymore because after the World War II, So unlike in Harry Potter, where none of the characters can participate because we got to let people do the Holocaust if they want, it just says that there were demigods on both sides, and things got really bad because it was World War II. And so Zeus was like, we need to rein them back in. And, you know, you can only do like Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades can't have kids.
Yeah.
And so Zeus broke the rules once with this girl who died and became the tree that protects Camp Half-Blood. And Grover was supposed to protect her and failed, so he has guilt about that. He has a song in the musical about it. And then Percy is Poseidon's son, and he wasn't supposed to have kids. So it's like a scandal that he exists.
So this is a huge plot point, and it never ever even gets mentioned in the movie. Instead, they make up a completely different thing, which is that none of the gods are allowed to have contact with their children, which is bullshit and makes no sense, and only exists, I think, so that they don't need to have the gods show up because it wasn't in the budget, I guess.
Yeah, Sean Bean is like, I need an extra $5 million, thanks.
Yeah.
I guess. So the big three, you know, they are the most powerful gods. Their kids are probably like the most powerful demigods. That tends to be the general assumption. And it's like, all right, the big three, if they have too many kids, World War II happens, so we're just gonna not do that. And in the first book, Percy seems to be the only one who is a problem. And there's also a prophecy in the background about something a child of the big three will do when they turn 16, basically. And now it's like, well, good news, Percy. We thought that prophecy was impossible, but now you're here, so have fun. There's like one other backstory thing, which is that Annabeth and Talia and Luke were all friends with each other. Like, Annabeth was like a little scrappy 6-year-old with a knife when Luke got her to camp along with Talia, and Talia died protecting them from like the things that were hunting them. And so she dies, and Zeus uses his power to save her from death by turning her into a tree. So Annabeth knew Talia and feels responsible for Talia's death. And Annabeth, another character trait of hers that is important, has a crush on Luke, has had a little baby crush on him the whole time. Like, obviously, from his perspective, she's like a little sister to him. It's never going to be a thing. She knows it, but like, it's a thing that keeps kind of coming up that Percy eventually figures out, even though he's dumber than rocks in certain parts of the book. So the idea that like, oh, Luke is this authority figure that Annabeth really looks up to and trusts, and Percy kind of intrinsically trusts him in part because of that, is completely absent in the movie. It's fucking fine. The thing about the big three, except for when Chiron awkwardly calls them that one time, which doesn't scan at all with the rest of the way he talks in the movie, that doesn't come up at all because the prophecy of the big three never comes up, and the fact that the big three are specifically not supposed to be having children doesn't come up, even though it's critically important for basically everything that happens after this book.
Oh, this is so. There's also Clarice he discovers he has water powers when she tries to give him a swirly, and he like summons the toilet water, and which is like, that's something a 12-year-old, I mean, I thought it was cool, but like, that's like a 12-year-old gonna be like, that's so fucking fun, you know, like, but this movie is against joy, fun, and happiness. And there's also, after he uses the water and capture the flag to defend himself from Clarice, who is explicitly like going too far and trying to kill him, he gets the sign from Poseidon, he's claimed. And then the Hellhound shows up to attack him, and they're like, you can only summon a Hellhound like if you're in camp. What does that mean? Maybe it's coming from Hades. It's like questions. Also, I get why they streamlined this. Dionysus runs the camp.
Oh my god, right. There's no Mr. D.
He was punished he slept with one of Zeus's favorite nymphs, or like flirted with her. Zeus punished him. He has to run this camp, and he hates it, and he hates the kids. And he can't get Percy Jackson's
He's
name.
got a heart of gold, but he's just, oh my god, I forgot. There's no Mr. D. They got rid of like all the best characters. he's really grouchy. He's on like probation. He can't have any alcohol because it's not child friendly. So every time he tries to like drink anything with alcohol, it like turns into something that's like more child appropriate, and he's like, this is stupid. And he aggressively refuses to get Percy Jackson's name right and calls it just any other combo of PJ names, which is very funny. But he's got like a heart of gold in there. He's also very candid about the fact that, hey, most demigods die horribly, so I'm not getting attached. Percy Jackson wants to go on a third quest in 3 years and get his ass eaten by something. Great, have fun. All right, if you die, we'll sew you a really nice shroud. And he's just not in the movie. It's just Chiron running the whole thing himself, which is stupid.
Yeah, it's again, there's a lot of joy, like, because that's missing, like the feast or this thing, and these magic drinks that can make anything you wanted, and
Oh yeah, nectar and ambrosia, the magical healing items that they have that they need to be careful not to overuse or they'll explode because everything in the books is terrifying.
So they're just chilling at this bonfire. These girls invite him to a party, and Annabeth is like, "Be gone, nymphs," and I'm like, "Is this nymph shaming? Is she shaming?" Because they don't even. Also, this is why I think this is nymph erasure, which is our theme. That I always harp on nymph erasure. Is that
Classic.
in the book they're like in the water, they're coming out of the trees. Here it's just like they just look like other campers. So I'm like, is she calling them nymph like slut? Like, be gone, bitches.
Interesting.
Because that's what this movie would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
The books do generally make it clear that like even the nymphs, they like dress like modern kids. It'll be like, oh, that looks like an extremely hip teenager. She's just sitting cross-legged at the bottom of the lake. That's kind of neat. And it's just this nice little hint. But in this case, it's like they're just fucking lining up for pancakes or whatever. Like what's even happening. And Annabeth continues to be mean for no reason and have no other personality. So whatever.
Yeah, Hades appears as a Satan-like demon. We
God.
love to hate.
The character assassination of Hades in this movie is fucking disgraceful. Like, even if we're just going with the canon of the books, where Hades is still more frequently an antagonist, he's like, Percy, or sorry, whoever. Yeah, no, it's Percy. He's like, I think Percy did it. Give me Zeus's lightning bolt. I want it so I can wage war on the other gods. And if you do, I'll give you your mother back. You've thought she was dead for all of 15 minutes, but no, I have her. When she exploded, that was me.
Yeah.
It's just like, so in the book, Hades is like, hey, I know you stole my helm of darkness, you ass. You have like 10 days to return it or I start blowing shit up. And Percy's like, I don't have either of those things. And that's the reason Hades is mad and like sending all these monsters after Percy, because he's like, look, I'm not my bitch brother who wants to make a scene about everything, but I know when I've been robbed and I'm fucking sick of it. So in this one, Hades is transparently like, I want to overthrow the other gods and destroy the world or whatever because I'm a jerk like that. And in the book, he's literally just doing his fucking job.
Yeah, he's just trying to run the underworld. I guess they watched Disney's Hercules and was like, this is all we need to know about Greek mythology. We got horny Phil, Satan allegory Hades, and a Hydra. That's everything this movie will need.
Perfect. The kids love Disney's Hercules. Yeah.
Awesome. So he is like, oh, well, he has my mom. I'm going to run off with Grover and Annabeth.
What day of camp is this? He's been there, 4 days?
Tops.
It was asleep.
Because what they had, how many days to return the lightning bolt?
14.
Okay.
And then he was asleep for 4 of them.
Okay. And then we'll talk about it in a little bit. So he's at camp for like a day and he's like, all right, well, I guess I'm leaving already.
Yes, exactly. Also, the whole like dead mom thing really kind of gets glossed over pretty quick, doesn't it? He's like, oh, my mom's gone. And then he's like, whoa, hubba hubba, who's that lady who doesn't look like she's supposed to from the book? It's just, oh boy, I don't know. We all cope in different ways, I guess, but man.
Yeah, we all cope in different ways.
Also, like, this is the most minor thing to be mad about, but like, what level of Greek mythology knowledge Percy has at any given scene is wildly inconsistent and just depends on like the needs of the plot. Because sometimes he's a dum-dum that doesn't know what a centaur is, and sometimes he knows Persephone and Hades' exact relationship with each other.
Yeah, it's this thing where in the books he was like a 12-year-old who had learned about it in class and had some knowledge and who liked it but wasn't like an expert, and so that was enough for him to still be able to ask questions the audience needed, but for him to like not have to be like whoa what at every scene. So they're gonna leave, but they go to Luke, who explains the pearls of Persephone. This is a movie thing with no lore. Pretty sure Rick Riordan made the same face Red is making now when they put it in the movie.
I was gonna ask, I was like, this seems like a really stupid concept. And I was like, why would this be made into a movie if this is in the book?
The pearls are in the book, but for a different reason, because they're associated with the ocean in the book. Because Persephone lives under the ground, so wouldn't you give her, I don't know, diamonds? But
it's fine. Look, the thing about the pearls, like the adventure in the book is different from the movie in a lot of ways. For one thing, it is an official camp-sanctioned quest, if I recall correctly. I
Yes,
think
he
they're
goes.
a little bit, yeah.
He gets a
Chiron, the
prophecy
Oracle.
from
Yeah.
the Oracle. Yeah.
So they're not sneaking out in the dead of night after like 8 hours of sword training. They're like officially going off on a demigod quest, and Annabeth attaches herself to the quest because she's like, I've been cooped up here for too long and I want a quest, so I'm coming with you.
Yeah.
Fight me about it. And they're like, they know from the beginning, okay, we're going to go to the underworld. We need to travel cross country to do it. And another thing that never comes up in the movie, Percy can't fly in an airplane because Zeus will hit it with lightning. So that's
he's
why
mad
they
at
have to
him.
get a road trip. Percy can't fly at all. In fact, when Hermes gives him like the flying shoes,
They're like, don't use them.
Yeah, Percy's like, oh no, I can't use these at all, or I'm gonna get hit by lightning. So I guess Grover can have them. And that just isn't in the movie at all, probably because it's not true. So instead, they're just driving for no reason, even though time is of the essence. And there's no MacGuffin hunt. They're just like running into random shit as they travel across country. And you know, monsters attack them because they're demigods and they smell delicious to monsters. But at some point, they run into a nymph who was sent by Poseidon, and she gives Percy these pearls, and he doesn't know what they're for, and she doesn't explain, and Poseidon doesn't explain. But I think it says something like, you know, just remember, like, what belongs to the sea can always return there. And he's like, cool, I don't know what that means. But they do function like they do in the movie, which is, you know, you crush one and it lifts you up in a bubble, and you can get out of the underworld that way. It returns you to the sea. But the movie was like...
not... Persephone places them for her lovers.
Yeah.
In random.
Her line of lovers just come through the underworld, and Hades is like, I don't know, aware of it and doesn't care, or isn't aware of it. That is so weird.
Yeah, you know what I think that was? I think someone on the writing or production team of this movie was like, dude, I'm so horny today. You know what would be funny? You know what would be great? A fantastic way to sublimate this in this child's movie for 10 to 16-year-olds? I think we should talk about how Persephone is constantly fucking and sucking down in the underworld. I think that would be so fun and not weird at all, and nobody will think that's weird for us to put in
this tool that we're going to give to the kids, we're going to explicitly say that it is actually used to get those lovers back up out of the underworld.
It's just so, like, it's
wild
in the book. It's such a blatant character assassination of absolutely everything, and it disrupts the flow of the movie. I think someone was like, I'm not willing to compromise on this. We need to make this movie fit somewhere in my spank bank, damn it.
It's like there's like the road trip thing. It slows everything down. They almost get into an accident because he falls asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, I think that was supposed to be funny, but then it just doesn't go.
Like, that's not funny.
No,
it happens.
So before they leave, Luke gives them Dora's map that just like shows the next place to go,
which is also completely original for the movie.
Yeah,
they just know where they're trying to fucking go in the movie. They know.
They know that the entrance to the underworld is in Los Angeles in the book, because why wouldn't it be? You know,
the map looks like the map from Harry Potter.
Yeah, what a coincidence!
It literally, and I was literally like, that's such a ripoff. Like.
And he gives them flying shoes and just his favorite shield. Okay.
And he reveals that he is, in fact, a thief.
Well,
and
he is the son of Hermes, so that tracks.
Son of Hermes.
But...
And he's like, people go to the underworld, Hercules, Orpheus. They never mention our girl Psyche. I'm like, she did it.
Yeah.
She did.
She did die a little bit. Like, that was an important thing that happened.
She like died when she got out.
True, yeah. I did like that they brought up Hercules and Orpheus, though. I was like, those are correct statements. That's a thing that happened. Good job, team.
Good job. Like, they did something other than watch Disney's Hercules, because they knew who Orpheus was.
Well, the thing about Hermes, like, being one of the only people who goes into the underworld and returns, is correct. Hermes is a psychopomp. He fills the role of guide to the dead sometimes. So he regularly travels. He takes souls into the underworld and then leaves. But also the fact that they establish in the movie, like, oh yeah, none of the gods are allowed to have contact with any of their kids at all. Zeus has proclaimed this. And still every demigod they meet is like, yeah, I just don't know what's up, but my demigod parent just won't give me the time of day. And it's like, how do you not know what's up? Zeus is not subtle. Why would they keep this a secret from their children? I don't understand what's happening. It really feels like they figured out that they were going to do that halfway through the movie. They were like, we're not going to do the big three thing. We're just going to make it so none of the gods get to hang out with their kids ever. And then fucking they didn't go back and check to make sure it made sense with the stuff they'd written before.
They did not do a draft. They did one draft and were like, let's go.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is my check-in point. The prophecy's an official quest from the Oracle. They can't fly. They leave New York. They get attacked by Furies who blow up a bus. They're lost in the woods. We learn about Pan missing. We see Grover eating cans. And then we get to Medusa. It's just like a place that they find. But in the movie, you got to go to Medusa, Ani M's, to get the pearl. Because why would Persephone live there? Garden Emporium.
Garden store. Yeah.
I will say flat out, I am dead positive that nobody who worked on this movie considered the implications of like Persephone has these pearls just for her lovers, and one of them is on Uma Thurman Medusa's bracelet. Don't worry about that. It's probably not gay.
It's probably not gay. Fanfic writers, we're calling.
I mean, why not, right? These characters are already completely unrecognizable. May as well make them kiss.
Yeah, we need some joy. So they go to this, there's like, they're running around trying to figure out where the pearl is. There's all these statues. They meet a woman who's like, she got my husband. And then we meet Uma Thurman Medusa.
Yeah, Grover runs into a statue of one of his uncles. He was like, wait, he was killed by, and he's like, ding, light bulb. Medusa.
This is such a like less effective execution of this scene than in the book, where like they're hanging out with Auntie M for like a while. And she's got this like veil on and this hat, and like there's this odd sound they can't quite make out because the snakes under it are making noises.
There's so much suspense.
Yeah, and she's like really aggressive specifically to Annabeth. No, there's no aggression, because as soon as we show up and Grover's like, oh my god, it's Medusa, we gotta get out of here. It's like, okay, it's Medusa.
As soon as they show up, you're like, this place is fucked. Like, you guys should not be here.
No, like, but Auntie M like lures them in with like food and drink, and like that's another thing. Like the bleakness of the vibe that they establish in the book of like everyone is always tired and sore and scared and hungry and they miss good food. It's like fucking Lord of the Rings energy of like, oh, I miss the taste of strawberries, Sam. But then like in the movie, they're all very well fed and hanging out and having a great time and nothing is wrong ever. And so there's no reason why they would be. This comes back way later with the fucking Lotus Hotel and Casino thing.
Oh yeah.
Like initially, the reason why they get stuck there is just because, oh my god, comfortable beds, a cash card with infinite money on it, food, as much of it as we want. This is awesome. They don't need to lure them in with magic drugs. They can just be like, hey kids, you've had a really fucking rough week. Take a load off, and it works because they're miserable and exhausted all the time. But the movies were like, let's carry him back to camp on our shoulders. He's the hero of the hour. We're all demigod heroes, but he's the heroiest because his face is on the poster.
I think this fight sequence is probably the best. And I would say Uma is chewing the scenery. She's having fun.
She's eating it up.
They're talking about Annabeth's hair because they can't do gray eyes. So they touch on the Medusa love of Poseidon and hatred of Athena.
I used to date your daddy.
Yeah,
I hated that.
But the book had her kind of be like, oh, I want to immortalize your face. Like it reminds me of your dad, and like it's so weird, but it's like just the whole vibe is much more suspense and like. Let's just hit her with a car.
That part was pretty funny, but yes,
it was. And Annabeth becomes like many a 2010s girl boss action girl. The moment you're in an actual situation, she suddenly becomes a helpless damsel.
I love in the movie where Grover's like, oh, here, I'll help you, I'll cut off the hand, and then she just peels the hand off. I was like, girl, you could have just moved your hand and escaped yourself.
I really thought that like that Medusa would have more in her repertoire of tools than, hey, you should open your eyes.
Just do it.
Just do it. Well,
you want to.
Oh man,
I have snakes for hair.
Yeah, it's like the snakes getting all over their business. That was creepy. I was like, okay, I'd probably have trouble keeping my eyes shut if that shit was happening. But also, like, I really thought she'd have more than just like getting all up in them and being like, hey, you should open your eyes for shits and gigs. I promise I won't look.
She was much more like not seductive, but had like a mesmerizing effect. So they all fall asleep on the road to Nashville because now they added you have to go to the Parthenon in Nashville. They stop. We get another pool scene. He has a flirty talk it's supposed to be flirty. Doesn't feel like it, but I know what that they want me to get from it.
They lore break as well. They introduce a thing that completely breaks the tension of later parts of the movie, and they establish it as a Chekhov's gun, and then they never fire it. Which is that Percy can use his water powers to heal other people.
Yes.
Not something he can do in the books. Not something he ever does again in the movie. But the number of times in the later books that people die tragically in his arms is not small. I'm just saying. Kind of a bust. So
yeah,
like in the books, it's like, hey, we have nectar and ambrosia that can heal us up, but it's a little bit like you might catch fire because it's food of the gods and you're only half god. It might fuck you up, so you have to be careful and ration it out, and it can't save everybody. And we've got the golden fleece that can heal things, but like we have to go through hell and high water to get that. And now the movie's like, Percy has magical Katara waterbending healing powers now.
Yep.
Everything's fine.
He's a waterbender.
He has much more Katara powers in the movie than in the book, and like just straight up healing someone like that, I'm like, it doesn't make sense. We wouldn't jump to that, so he didn't yeah. And they try
to establish for something that doesn't go anywhere and actively makes the rest of the story worse.
That's how we know, like, they care for each other. That's our signal.
Oh, fuck, you're right. That's the reason they put that in there. He couldn't put a Band-Aid on it. They had to just break the lore.
yeah you can't just like clean the wound with water. You gotta fully heal it.
Oh my
Grover.
God. I had a note about one of the worst Annabeth lines, and it was like one of her first lines where she says, I definitely have strong feelings for you. I just haven't decided if they're positive or negative yet.
Oh,
that was so
Who the
bad.
fuck wrote this movie? Why is the dialogue like this?
I mean, was it like this in Scooby-Doo? I don't think so.
No, Scooby-Doo was better.
Scooby-Doo's a classic. Scooby-Doo is Shakespeare compared.
Mary Jane, like, that's my favorite name, man.
Yeah.
That shit. Those movies were art.
And this was not. So Grover calls them over because, I mean, there's storms building up. Gabe says that Percy's a criminal who kidnapped his mom, who's missing. The maid sees Medusa's head and, of course, says Dios mio. I love little details like that. Love it. And then we get to the Parthenon. They wait till night, and then Annabeth knocks out the janitors with like her stun gun.
Knockout crossbow that she doesn't have in the books and doesn't make any sense.
And then Percy.
Grover straight up thinks she's killed them, and then she's like, they're just unconscious. We've got 30 minutes. And I was like, boy, that would have been useful in other situations. Like when that screaming woman was dragging you into danger before. I'm just saying, like, if you have the sleepy fun time button, just,
use that. Yeah. So he flies up to get the pearl. The guards turn into the Hydra. We kind of get a rehash of the Hercules fight, but with water effects now. Yeah. Like a whole geyser coming out of a drinking fountain.
They try their fucking best. This whole fight is not in the book. They don't let the Hydra ever.
So this is our another check-in point. So we talked about the differences with Medusa. In the book, they go to St. Louis. They have a fight on the arch with Echidna and the Chimera. Percy saves a kid, but people still blame him on the news. And this is where he falls off the arch into the river, and the sea nymph tells him to go to Santa Monica when he gets to LA.
Yeah.
We also get the news coverage. This is a big one. We meet Ares. He is...
Oh my God, Ares is critical to the plot of the book.
And so he's like, I'll help you. You got to go to a water park where I hook up with Aphrodite and get her scarf. And it's a trap set by Hephaestus that's supposed to like catch Aphrodite and Ares, and it's like being streamed to Olympus, and they escape, and Percy and Annabeth are like embarrassed because they were like in the trap tunnel of love thing, and he gives them a backpack with stuff that they need and maybe something else in it. They go to Vegas on a truck with neglected animals. This upsets Grover. He hates when humans mistreat animals in nature. He can talk to animals. He frees them all. And at some point they talk to Luke through like a rainbow made by the water in
Iris message.
Iris got us at the rainbow.
I don't remember the exact detail in the book, but it's like demigods can't use like normal cell phones for whatever reason. I think it's like, monsters can track them, or maybe they just don't work. So instead they use Iris messages, which is more fantasy and cool. But the movie's just like, what's that? I can't hear you over my crisp new iPhone 3. Look at this reflective backing that I'm using to hide the Medusa.
My
Oh,
God,
that
I
was-
lost my mind seeing that iPhone. And I was trying to explain it to my boyfriend who has never had an iPhone. I was like, okay, you don't even understand. But this hits me in like the deepest 2010s place in my heart. And I'm crying. It's reflective. It's rounded. There's a whole, like, the whole outside that has the button.
It shows every fingerprint you leave on the back.
It's disgusting. That is the cleanest iPhone I've ever seen. If I was in that situation, I would be dead because I'm like scrubbing my iPhone.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, I can't see anything.
Well,
Wipe it off on the jeans. Oh,
Yeah, going.
It's also very clear product placement because iPhones were not as ubiquitous.
Yes.
I did not have an iPhone when this movie came out when I was in high school.
No.
I had a flip phone.
I may have had.
And then maybe
like
eventually I had a
I think I had
slider.
a touch. I may have had a. Maybe
I had an iPod
Touch
Touch in
at
college.
this
Yeah.
point.
I didn't get an iPhone until I was graduating college, which, you know, I'll admit I was late to the party. But still, what I mean is like, you don't have to explain away iPhones at this particular era, but we got to throw them in there.
But oh God. Oh,
and
I loved it.
Percy also in the book has a dream where there's this chasm and there's an entity in the chasm giving instructions to someone who's most likely Luke. It's unclear, but you start to get those hints. So now back to the movie. They get to Vegas. They get to the Lotus Hotel. They eat the lotus flower candy. And speaking of, you know, it makes me think of Charlie eating the brownie in Perks of Being a Wallflower. And we get Lady Gaga's smash hit Poker Face.
Oh
I was like, they worked backwards from the scene. They're like, okay, it says Vegas in this song. That's the one we're going with.
And they are playing games. Grover's getting manicures and dancing around all horny on stage, and they're having fun. But Poseidon sends voice messages, and this is something that the gods do, where they like send little voice messages, and Athena sometimes does it to Annabeth. And so Percy is like, he's like, don't eat the lotus.
You gotta leave.
You gotta get out of here, girl.
And so you gotta get out of here, girl. And so he stops them. Like, now we're playing Tick and Also Talk by rapper Key $ Ha.
Yes.
And they escape because like all the people are actively trying to keep them there. Percy also talks to someone who's like from the 70s who's still stuck there. And they escape via car. We love a car action sequence. They're like, we need a little more Fast and Furious. They also just randomly find the pearl in the game.
Yeah. In the giant casino. It's just there.
It's just casually there. So now they're like, oh, we were stuck there, you know, for so many days. We lost track of time. We have one day left. They're like, oh, it only takes a few hours to get to LA. That is, if you hit traffic, that's been a 5-hour drive for me before. They get to LA and the underworld. They just waltz up to the Hollywood sign. I know we're in a magical world full of gods, but you can't walk up that close. And the underworld is just there. There's like, go to the underworld, and because that's where the map says it is. And they just walk in.
And that's just, you know, Chris Columbus and everyone going, Hollywood is the devil.
And you walk into like, literally, it's like the queue at Disneyland. Like the first room, you're suddenly full underworld. There's a Karen who needs your coins. He's going to burn your money because Grover the satyr doesn't know how the underworld works. And Annabeth is like, beats me. And Percy's like, we should use the drachmas we got from Medusa's fountain.
It's just, nobody does anything because of who they are as a person. It's just what the needs of the plot require of them. So
yeah, because she picks them up out of the fountain at Medusa's place. And she was like, hey, look at these. And then they're like, cool, let's take them just in case.
Like, if she's supposed to be smart girl, have her make smart choice. That's like,
smart girl makes smart choice.
Smart girl do smart thing. What? No way. Protagonist boy who doesn't know what a centaur is clearly knows what a golden drachma is.
Clearly.
Yeah. So now we're in the underworld, generic hell. People are suffering. Loose objects of broken dreams and misery. Wild statements are made about life and death. But let's do a quick check-in. Okay, the Lotus Hotel, similar enough. We're missing a guy in LA who tries to stretch them out on mattresses. That's kind of a just like a little side quest, so I get that. They go to Santa Monica in the book. They get the pearls from the sea nymph. And then the underworld is in a record company, and it's like a waiting room. So like they modernize the underworld a lot more, and it's a lot more clever. They're trying to bribe Charon with like a new suit, like money for a new suit. And they describe the underworld in all its different regions, like the Elysian Plains and the Blessed Isles and Tartarus and Punishment and Asphodel. And there's Goofy Cerberus loves Annabeth, gives him a red ball, and he loves Annabeth. There's people being judged. An evil televangelist who committed fraud is like punished by demons, and they're saying, well, maybe to him this just looks like hell. And so we also get the Luke's shoes. The shoes try and take Grover to Tartarus.
And they're like, that's weird.
Yeah,
when that happened, Percy was supposed to be wearing those. I'm sure it's fine.
We get now, but now we're back to this movie, and it just drops them off at the Palace of Hades, where they just walk in, and three hounds first it's two hounds, later there's a third, but no Cerberus. And Persephone is just like horny. She just comes in and
she's just so fucking horned.
Welcome to my sex dungeon.
Yeah, and she smells what's his name, Grover, and is like, oh, I've never had a satyr before. And he's like, shaboing. And we're like, I'm dying. I can't take this.
Also, they may be teenagers, but they're still teenagers.
They're teenagers. It's creepy.
It's weird.
Everything about this movie is so fucking weird, and the only part that feels internally consistent is all the aggressively horny stuff, and it really feels like they aged up the characters to like the bare minimum where this doesn't feel like an actual crime is happening.
I was like, did they age them up just to make this movie hornier?
Like,
that's a legitimate.
Yeah, they're trying to play into like more of an adult teenage movie, like something like Superbad, but not as like raunchy. Like there is that element of it, like with all of the sex stuff.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
That is weird, but it's like a magical adventure about saving your mom, not like trying to get laid at a party. Like.
This is the only part of the movie that felt like the people who were writing it were enthusiastic about writing it.
Yes.
Deeply unsettling.
I hate that.
What the fucking point of this movie is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need a sexual reference on every page.
So I kind of hate because I like the whole like Hades as old rock star vibe. I think that's a funny aesthetic. It doesn't make any sense, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
They just fucking.
Yeah, it could be Hades rocker guy with his goth GF, but no. We get Mick Jagger Hades, and he's like, I'll trade Sally for the lightning. Percy says, like, I don't have the lightning. Turns out the lightning was in the shield. It's a trap from Luke. Yeah. But
so that's another book change because they fucking cut out Ares and everything he does in the plot. Ares is the one who gives them the backpack that has the lightning bolt in it. And I think the helm. He just gives them like a backpack of supplies and also hidden god stuff to like literally leave them holding the bag, but he's not in this movie, so whatever.
Luke wasn't the bad guy in the book.
Luke is.
He fully was, but he's like the Saruman of the bad guy situation.
Yeah, that's a good.
There's people who are way higher up the bad guy ladder.
Right.
They don't even fucking find out that Luke is the bad guy until the very end. It's a twist reveal.
Yeah.
So they think, oh, Ares is the main villain. He's kind of a bad dude. That makes sense. But then he says something weird about like he's been having these dreams, which is weird. And because gods don't really do that. And they're like, oh, I wonder what's up with that. And it's like, oh, the true main villain is somebody even bigger and badder than Ares. And also the true traitor, the real lightning thief was Luke all along. Oh my God. We're beset on all sides by enemies. And then the movie was like, Luke, what a bad dude he is. Came up with this all by himself, I guess. Boy, what an impressive kid. Okay, anyway.
Yeah. see it. They're gonna be dragged into the underworld by the angry souls from the fireplace. But Persephone gets the lightning, and she's like, my only joy is leaving this place. So I'm gonna give you this so you can fix it. And I'm like, why wouldn't you maybe say fuck the system and take over yourself, Persephone? Because I would support that for you. But
doesn't she say, if this lightning bolt doesn't get found, there will be like a war,
Yeah.
and so he's gonna be there more often?
I think it's like if the system breaks down, she won't have her allotted time out of the underworld, so she'll just be stuck with him.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. She's basically trying to avoid being with him.
Yeah, she hates him because the movie hates me personally. Nothing else fucking makes sense in this movie. I kind of like the moment where she like playfully takes it and then like zaps him and then like excitedly jumps up and down a little bit. I was like, that's cute. Everything else about this is awful, but whatever.
I mean, I love Rosario Dawson. I think she's doing her best with this terribly written character. She's trying to have fun, and no one else in this movie is having fun. So like, I support her in that.
They also change how the scene ends because they change Hades' characterization in such a way that the thing that happens in the book wouldn't make any sense. Because basically they have 3 pearls and there are 4 of them, and in the book they only have 3 pearls, and it's like, okay, we want to get Sally, but we also, there's 3 of us, and Grover's like, dude, you can leave me behind, Hades can do terrible things to me, but satyrs don't really have a soul, I'll just be like reborn as a flower or something, and it's like, that's so depressing. And they basically have to leave without Sally. They can't rescue her, and it's this really sad moment.
A prophecy of you'll lose what matters most.
Yeah, exactly. And they realize like, oh no, I can't save my mother. This is heartbreaking. But by the end of the movie, when everything's cleaned up, Hades is like, all right, look, I'm kind of an asshole, but I keep my fucking debts, and he sends Sally back up, basically.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not gonna keep your mother prisoner for no goddamn reason. All right, here you go. But this Hades would absolutely do that because he sucks.
Because he's just be a demon and he wants to take over, and so they, because this is Hades is mad in the book because he has his skeleton army, they have his helmet of his invisibility. He doesn't really want a war because he's already stressed with like the amount of souls he has.
So many people are gonna die, and then he's gonna have so much more paperwork. He doesn't want this to happen. He's annoyed. It makes perfect sense for him.
So then Percy is like always tricked by Ares. And then they leave his mom and they go up. They don't leave Grover to be the sex toy of Persephone.
Right. Because they're like, the writers are like, okay, we could make the choice that's in the book, or we could make the horny choice.
The horny choice. And you could have the 2 horniest characters be like our 2 main characters of color. So
yeah, I will admit when they were like, here's Persephone, she's played by Rosario Dawson, I was like, that's cool. It's kind of rare to have a character in this context who's played by a black actor or actress when that wasn't like explicitly stated in the canon. I wonder why. And then I was like, oh wait, so they don't show a mixed race relationship on screen except between her and Hades, who she fucking hates. That's real fucking cool. They did the exact same thing in the D&D movie, not the new one, but like the 2000s one, because they have a black best friend, and then they have a black elf who just shows up. She's this cool elf warrior lady, and she's also black. And I was like, oh my god, even nowadays people are bitching about there being black elves in D&D. I can't believe this early 2000s movie pulled it off. And then I was like, oh wait, it's because she's the love interest for the black best friend, isn't it? And then that was correct. So it's like, so which is like, does the progressiveness of more representation on screen outweigh the inherent anti-mixed race relationship underpinning of this thing that keeps happening? I think maybe it's bad either way. Anyway. So then Persephone and Grover fucking bone down nasty style for the entire rest of the movie, I guess.
Persephone isn't even in the book because it was summer and he was...
It was June! She wasn't supposed to be there!
Oh, yeah!
Yeah. So... well,
they're like, well, she's our plot point and also our horny point, so we need her.
I am convinced that when they pitched this, they were like, hey, look, I know they don't do this in the book, but wouldn't it be funny if we built the whole movie around these 2 characters having sex? One of them's not even in the book. I just think it would be fun. Let's do that, right? It's like, oh, I guess we gotta also do a bunch of other stuff. Oh, but we can be really clever with the planting and the payoff. We can plant the Persephone, right, is really horny all the time, and then we can pay it off at the end when she bones the main character's black best friend. We're geniuses. Oh fuck! I guess also we have to do the lightning thief thing at some point.
Yeah, we have a plot.
We're gonna have to cut out Ares for time, though. We need to make room for more sex jokes and inappropriate flirting with teenagers.
Yep.
Fucking hell.
So we're at the final act. So Sally, Annabeth, and Peter, they just appear. I'm on Empire State Building. They're gonna go up to Olympus. Luke attacks. He wants to overthrow the gods with the war and take over a new world. Which what I like about the motivation of Luke, and this is from the book, the movie didn't earn this, is that it is you do get it, because the Greek gods are jerks, and being forced into the place he is, like, you don't approve of his behavior, obviously, but you get where he's coming from, which I think is great. But anyway, so Luke and Percy fight. Annabeth does so little. I'm like, what? And then they're just like flying around the skyscrapers, and he beats him with water. And I think this is key. Nothing he learned on the way helps him do this. No friendships, no discoveries. It's not the friends we made along the way. There's nothing. He has no arc. There's nothing he learns. There's nothing that causes this to happen. It's just it's like a video game, like a poorly written video game where the number of points you have and you just mash your abilities till he runs out of hit points.
I will say one very subtle character moment that I actually like in this scene that isn't from the book, because this whole thing didn't happen in the book, which is when Luke has the Master Bolt and is like fucking around with it, and he's like outflown Percy and the others, and he's briefly just kind of fucking around. He just randomly sees this civilian helicopter and he like takes aim like he's gonna blast it out of the sky for no reason, and then Percy like blindsides him and the fight starts. And I was like, for the version of Luke that exists in this movie, that is a very revelatory, very minor moment of just like, you know, he's talking about like, you know, the gods have been in power for too long, it's our turn, and he's immediately like, let's kill some people for fun, just for shits and gigs. And I was like, that is a good villain moment. I like that, and I like that Percy stops him immediately, so I don't need to watch a civilian helicopter fucking explode. But like, that was the part where I was like, wow, this movie had at least one writer on their payroll. That's crazy.
That's wild. So he wins, they get run up, they have 2 minutes to make it up to Olympus, they get in the elevator, you know, the mom can't make it through barrier number 2, but they said 2 minutes and they show this huge city. I'm like, there's no way you can make that in 2 minutes.
Maybe he still has the flying shoes.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm a fast walker, I've lived in a walkable city, and I'm gay, you know. I can't make that in 2 minutes. I have long legs, but still. No. So all the gods are doing their best, gods of Egypt / Clash of the Titans, and being tall and standing there and like having a vague argument. And
armor in that scene is so fucking embarrassing. I don't know what's wrong with it. Like the armor at camp, at least it's like, oh, it's, you know, we're supposed to be moving past these guys pretty quickly, their action scenes, whatever. But these guys are just fucking standing around, and it's like, that's like a fucking Playmobil, like plastic, belt this night pauldron thing on your front side and put on this hat and go wave your stick, because you're 6 if you think that this looks like good costuming.
And they're just standing, and like and the book like goes into a lot of detail about like Olympus and what it's like and how the gods look, and like modernizes it. And this really just goes straight up swords and sandals. And also, we've established I'm not a big Athena stan. I'm more of a team Aphrodite, but I've never seen a movie do her costume right in the very obvious way of having her like be the warrior with the aegis and her help, like the way she was like almost always depicted. They always make her very femme.
Yeah. And
like, not that she's like butch either, but I'm like, it's just, there's so many artistic depictions of Athena, and she never looks like any of them in these movies. She always just like in a toga with long hair, and you're like, what?
Cool. Fantastic.
That's not practical for the battlefield.
And also, like, when they see her statue in the Parthenon in Nashville, Annabeth says, like, oh, I wonder if she really looks like that. And it's like a kind of a cool, like 1/3 of a character moment. And then we see her, and it's like, oh, guess not. All right. No armor, no spear, no helmet, no shield.
In the Parthenon scene, he does like kind of crash into the statue's boobs.
He crashes into the statue's boobs,
and I was expecting,
like, ooh.
I was expecting this movie to make a joke about that more because it's this movie, and they didn't. They cut it for time. Like, this one's too much.
Moment where he was like, "Ma'am, sorry for getting all up close and personal with your statue," or something.
Is this movie PG? Right? Maybe crashing into the boobs would make it PG-13. That joke.
I mean,
they're like,
maybe
we gotta cut it.
So Percy,
I forgot about that part.
Percy's
I
like,
repressed it.
here's your lightning. Luke took it. What a narc. But he's like, Luke
And Zeus
had it.
immediately believes him.
He's like, great, no questions asked.
Percy fucking walks in with his stolen lightning bolt and is like, here, but it's not mine. I promise. It was this other guy. You don't know him, but he's for sure real, and he's the son of the god of
Hermes.
thieves. Yeah. And Zeus is like, you have done well, Perseus Jackson. And it's like, bro, really? Are you kidding me?
They only had like Sean Bean for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, Sean Bean, like, he's like, I gotta go.
He's got an appointment. He can't miss it.
And he also is like, help Grover, and he's like, I'm mad at you, but I guess I will. And Athena is just like Annabeth, because she's not there in the book, but she's there here. She's like, I'm proud of you. Poseidon then has this convo with him where he's like, I loved you too much. It was turning me into a human. And according to Zeus, we can't have that. And Percy's just kind of like, okay, sure, Jan. And that's like a wild lore bit to drop in the last, that gods can become human by loving too much. Wild. That
especially like, don't fucking tell Aphrodite that. She's gonna be heartbroken.
yeah.
Like, this is such a baffling way to explain one of the movie changes, which is like, oh, all the gods are not allowed to talk to their kids. Zeus decreed it, and then Poseidon casually drops like, yeah, that's my fault. That's my fault for not being an absentee father for the first 7 months of your life. Because of that, none of your friends are allowed to have parents anymore. And Percy's like, wow, that's pretty rough, bro. Let's have a handshake about it. And it's like, what? Why are you still helping Zeus with anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. They get back. Grover's back at camp. They're like all cool. Chiron is like, it's good you disobeyed me. Very Disney Channel parent.
Yes, favorite student in this entire camp full of children I'm desperately trying to keep alive against all odds, but you're the best.
You're the best.
Your face is on the poster.
Gabe comes back to pick up his stuff, and he opens the fridge and sees Medusa's head. That's our little post-credit scene. Oh, I skipped the final scene is the weird fight dance with Annabeth where she like almost kisses him and then she's like, I disarmed you. You know what? This flirt fighting, it only worked in the Bionicle movie for me. It's not working for me in this.
No, it's bad and stupid for a number of reasons. Not least of which being these two people cannot possibly have chemistry because they have half a personality between them.
No, they're just so this is our final check-in because
and this sort of assumes that like he's gonna be living at camp now forever.
Yeah, because
like that's kind of how it ends.
To school. Well, I guess the implication, like in the books, it's like, dude, you're 12 going on 13. You still have to go to school. Like you have to do that. But I guess if he's like 18-ish to make this stuff that's happening in the movie not borderline illegal, I guess he can be like, who needs college? I'll just go to summer camp for year round, whatever.
Which is wild. They're releasing it, I think this year. There's a book about Percy going to college coming out.
Kind of fun.
So this is our check-in because the ending is very different. In the book, they throw down the pearls. They're in the ocean. They get on the beach. Los Angeles is in shambles. They fight Ares himself. Uses the water power. They take a risk and they fly to New York. They go up to, I almost said Mount Everest, Empire State Building. They see Zeus and Poseidon, or Percy does. He gives the lightning. There's a lot more of a thing going on. We don't need to get into all those details. He goes home, and this is what I really like because he initially shipped the Medusa head to the gods, and they sent it back like ha ha ha. Yeah. And then he goes home and he gives Sally the Medusa head, and he's basically like empowers her to make the choice. Like, I'm going to give this to you to do with it what you want. And again, because this relationship is so sweet and developed, it is very much more like he's trying to give her agency, but also more of like he's still a boy and he loves his mom. He's worried about her. But even though he's presented with the option of swooping in and fixing everything, he's still like, he loves and respects her enough to like let her make her own choices, And I just really liked their relationship in the book. I was like, I love this. And I love how they did it. And she does eventually turn Gabe into stone. And she uses that to pay for writing school at NYU.
Basically, she's like, I'm selling this extremely detailed stone statue I made of these 4 dickheads playing poker. I'll take $1 million, please, and I'm never doing this again. And it's such a fun little, like, it's kind of fucked up, and I kind of really like it that the moral paragon of these books, Percy's, wonderful saintly mother, is like, yeah, I've killed a man. Several. Fuck him. He's an abuser.
And then I sold their corpses as art.
And then
went and got my MFA.
Yeah. Go live my dreams. And I like that because, like, Gabe is such an asshole. Like, he's really awful.
Yeah.
Like, the implication from the book is that Sally is doing a lot to insulate Percy from, like, knowing about the worst of it. So, like, she's concealing, like, okay, yeah,
Bruises,
Gabe definitely hits her. Yeah. But Percy is 12 and she's going out of her way to, like, make sure that Percy doesn't find out about a lot of that, because Percy is 12, but he will throw hands and, cause problems and get himself hurt.
Yeah.
So she's making a lot of sacrifices for him. And, like, it's like, was it fucked up that she used the Medusa head on those guys? Yes. Am I going to be mad about it? No. Whoever, who the fuck cares? I like it. But, like, it adds this interesting twist of spice to her character of, like, Percy was like, hey, Mom, you want to do a little murder? Here you go.
Maybe.
We'll never catch you. And she's like, probably not. I'll save it for a rainy day. And then she was like, actually, fuck this guy. Let's totally do it. And I like that because it's fucked up. And I think that's cool. And it contributes again to the feeling of the books where, like, this is a kind of fucked up world. And, like, things are really hard and there aren't really rules. And, the gods that we answer to are fallible and a lot of them are dicks. And it's...
and that captures the spirit of Greek mythology, not the Christian imposed version that we always do in movies where there's heaven good, hell bad. There's a lot more shades of gray.
And then the movie's like, what's that? Heaven good, hell bad, can do.
But I wish I had turned someone to stone to pay for my MFA because Biden did not come through. So there's also a lot in the book about what is he gonna do? Is he gonna go home and be with his mom? Is he gonna stay at camp? Annabeth has issues with her family. He convinces her to, try again. Her dad reaches out, though. Her dad takes initiative from that. So he's not just like, fix him. Like, the dad does take initiative. He decides to go home, but on the last day, he's like fight training with Luke. And then Luke is like, oh, let's go get some water. And then he tries to kill him with this scorpion. Turns out he's working for Kronos to release him. And so he almost kills Percy. And it's this deep betrayal because it's like your cool older camp brother tries to murder you.
The guy that your sort of girlfriend has had a crush on for like half of her life. Whoops.
Yeah. And so he goes to a new regular school and he lives with his mom during the school year. So that's the book versus the movie. Usually we talk about vibes and aesthetic, but I don't think there was one.
Like, the aesthetic was really, really cheap looking. I don't know why. Yeah. It felt like this movie would have been a guaranteed hit if they fucking tried. I don't know. I think weird how bad this was.
It would have been huge, but I do think it was like Hollywood trying too hard to both replicate everything and not be anything else. So it was nothing. We always have to root for our protagonist.
I guess an obligatory yes, because he's the protagonist and it's like, well, what else am I gonna do during this movie?
I like Logan Lerman. I felt nothing.
It felt like the empty husk of a better movie that, like, when it molted and left it behind. I don't know how to explain it otherwise. It's just it was so empty. It was like utterly devoid of soul. Every character, like, there were a few moments where like Logan Lerman was pulling it off. He was pretty good at the funny scenes where he's like reacting with panic and confusion at things happening. And I was like, there we go. There's a pretty funny bit in the capture the flag scene where like he just like clocked a guy on the back of the head with the palm of his sword, and then he's like running off like, how did I just do that?
And then he falls.
Like, slips. And I'm like, I don't know if he was supposed to do that, but that's absolutely how that scene should have ended. And it's also like, I don't know how you did that either. Nobody has ever given you any sword training. It's day one of you being awake in camp. So I don't know why you could do that, but whatever. And like none of the characters wanted anything except when they were horny, and that was motivating them. And like Percy was like, oh, my mom is dead. This is crushing. Oh, just kidding.
I'm in a cool camp.
And then like 10 minutes later, it's like, good news, your mom's not dead. So fuck, I guess you don't need to keep pretending like you're sad about that, because you weren't. Great. This works out fantastically.
Yeah.
Because we also will ask, like, do you ship the main couple? No. Annabeth and Percy. Annabeth is so boring. I would
don't
say
even ship him and Grover as friends. Like,
no. Grover is the only one with a personality, and it's not a good one.
yeah, he's just a
like,
horn dog.
yeah, dude, I'm your protector. Whoa, hubba hubba, something with an ass just walked by, and it's just like, my dude, you are bad at your job.
Yeah.
In fact, like if this Grover was like, oh, I was negligent and it got Talia killed, it's like, why? Was there a woman within a 6-mile radius? Is that what the fuck happened? Oh, how sad and tragic.
Because Grover is such a sweet little nature boy in that book.
Yeah, he's so sweet in the book. And like, there were things in the movie where I was like, this is funny, but Book Grover would rather die than put himself in this situation.
Yeah, in a poker face musical number. Yeah.
I worry that they were like, as soon as they decided that Grover was going to be the black best friend, they were like, well, we got to give him the personality of the black best friend. That's gonna be everything that's going on with him. And it's like, oh no.
Yeah, and the antagonist, I guess, was just Luke, sort of Hades, and Luke was so boring.
Ares is such an interesting character in the books, which is shocking to say because Ares is such a meathead in everything. But in the book, he's this macho tough guy with something to prove. Like, he gets easily manipulated into evil because he gets tricked into thinking that a war with the gods is his idea. And it would be awesome because he's the god of war. So clearly that would power him up, right? That would be good. That'd be great. And like, he's so manipulable, but he has to believe that it's his own idea because he's all this, like, he's just way too macho. And because we're first introduced to the concept of Ares through his daughter Clarice, who is a massive bully and an asshole with also something to prove. Like, then we meet Ares and we're like, oh, this explains a lot about everything. And like, he like mentions like, oh, you know, maybe my daughter Clarice, don't worry, I don't mind that you kicked her ass. He builds character, water under the bridge. But then when he's fighting Percy in the finale, because the final boss fight is with him. And like, it's like, oh yeah, Percy, good luck fighting the god of war. And everyone is like, oh my God, he's going to die. And the only reason he wins is because he basically like plays possum a little bit. Like, he sort of like retreats out into the ocean and is like, I'm going to use all my power to hold the ocean back just enough that once I buy enough time, I can just hit Ares with a tidal wave and then fucking book it. Okay. And it's like a scrappy, smart way to win against an overwhelming opponent. Whereas in the fucking movie, he'd probably just be doing backflips around him and then everyone would clap and carry him away on their shoulders.
And no one was homophobic or racist again. I just think this, we also will talk about themes, and I don't think there is a theme to this movie, and it's just noise. Like,
they don't have anything to say.
Percy doesn't go.
Be horny. It's fun.
Be horny. That's the message.
Hey, Persephone is DTF 24/7.
Because he doesn't learn anything, or even in the most basic Hollywood, like, doesn't really gain anything. You don't feel like he has something he was missing.
Family.
No,
family.
He's happy to get his mom back.
Nothing even about the friends you made along the way. Like,
no, they're not helpful at all in the finale. And he's not like, like, they don't even give him a weapon he can use or something like that. Or like, we'll hold off this other threat while you go deal with Luke. They're just like, oh fuck, I guess we gotta wait on this rooftop for him to do the entire rest of the movie. All right, cool, nice to meet you, ma'am. Your son's a real dickhead. Anyway, it's just fucking baffling. There's nothing in this movie.
It was just noise. And so that's when we get to the question of, was that your fantasy?
No.
Usually in my notes, I write like, oh, this is what I thought about. My note was was that your fantasy? It was just no. Period. It's like,
I'm glad that they're doing like a miniseries version now where like kids are the correct ages and they've got fucking Rick Riordan on the team and it's gonna work out well because the bar that they have to clear is so low.
Yeah,
they're just gonna get the fans like going like, oh my God, they did the thing. Look, they actually included the 8 principal characters that the movie didn't. This is so cool, you guys.
Yeah, I think my biggest gripe with this movie is that it also feels like the people who made it did not care. Like the production teams of other movies that were successful because their production teams cared. This was purely like, this is going to be the new Harry Potter. let's just get it done. And it was like,
no
there's
love for the
soul.
source material, no love even for the story they are currently telling, right?
Yeah.
Because we love when things deviate and change sometimes, but like you still have to love there's no affection for anything that's happening.
No, it's absolutely baffling because like I would at least expect them to love the concept of making more money. And they purposefully didn't include the things that are required for the sequels to make sense. And they knew that because of when this movie came out. Like, bare minimum, Clarice is a very important character for the Sea of Monsters, which is why they introduce her in the sequel movie, The Sea of Monsters.
Do you think they would be scared to show a boy being bullied by a girl in a not hot way?
Oh my God, is that why?
I think that I didn't connect that till right now
damn
because there's sexual tension with Annabeth and Percy. But if it's just like a mean girl, especially, I don't know. I think they would be like, we can't show our male
just a
lead
mean, physically
being
stronger
weak.
girl. Yeah, I think even in the second, because like Clarice is supposed to be like big and powerful, and in the second movie she's played by this short, very attractive blonde woman. I think.
I think
honestly have made a more convincing Annabeth than the Annabeth that we got, because Annabeth is supposed to be blonde. It's fine. I'm not that mad.
But blondes like boy and makeup. Brunettes like think brain and fight.
Yep.
I guess
I like think brain and fight because I have brown hair.
That is movie logic. They're like, if you're blonde, you are Elle Woods, you are Regina George, you are Sleeping Beauty. If you're brunette, you are a fighter.
I suppose I was giving the writing team too much credit for thinking that they were even slightly open-minded about any sort of writing characters that were a little bit non-standard. They were like, we'll pay lip service to the fact that our main character is neurodivergent, and then it will never, ever, ever come up, ever, ever. And we also won't mention that every demigod is, and thus also struggles with the exact same things. Nope. No, it's fine.
No.
Look, we've got you a black best friend. Isn't that fun? We got you a Satan analog to put in their pantheon that has no Satan analog. We didn't include the two obvious cool bad guys, except when we had to, when we put them in the Sea of Monsters. I don't want to derail this into the sequel movie, but I had the exact same reaction when I watched that because they made another fucking baffling choice, which is at the end of that movie, they kill Kronos. Like forever, he's dead. Turns out that Percy's sword could kill him the whole time.
Why didn't Zeus just do that to begin with?
I don't know.
He didn't have the right sword.
I guess. But also it's like, okay, cool. We are never making another one of these movies because they're over now. We just beat the big bad. Cool.
Yikes.
I feel like the only possible explanation is that like most of the people on the team didn't care, and one of the people on the team fucking hated these books.
Yeah, no, honestly.
I need to make absolutely certain that I'm not roped into working on these things for the next 10 years of my life. So we're sabotaging it right out the gate. We don't need this Ares guy. We don't need that Kronos fella. We don't need Mr. D.
Yeah. As the YouTuber Mike's Mike called it, Percy Jackson boy employee. So like opposite of girl boss.
Boy employee.
Boy employee.
So thank you, Red, so much for coming on.
Oh, well, thanks for giving me the outlet. When I went into watching this movie, I was like, this first 10, 15 minutes isn't so bad. Maybe I remember it badly. And then afterwards, I was like, that movie took so fucking long to do anything.
Yeah.
And like, even at the end, when like it felt like the tension was finally winding down for what tension there was, it's like, wow, we finally got to Olympus. We're going to explain everything by standing in a room and staring at each other. And then the scene kept fucking going. And I was like, I get it. You can go. Stop it. Come on. And then they go in camp and he slowly walks and talks with Chiron. It's like, I get it. The movie's ending. I get it.
This movie was worse than I remembered it. Like I remembered it being like mid, and like now I don't think it's even fully mid. Like it's not even a movie.
The worse it gets.
Yeah.
So like when I ended it, I was like, I'm glad that's done. I'm going to bed. And now I'm like, oh, I hate it with the fury of 1,000 suns. Why is it like this?
Yeah, Gods of Egypt at least didn't ruin a beloved franchise. You know,
Egypt at least had an interesting finale with a big dramatic boss fight and some stakes and like oh no, this character died. I need to do some work to fix that. And when this movie was like Percy can heal other people, I was like, wow, can't wait for somebody to like dramatically take a bullet for him in the finale. And then nope, they cunningly subverted my expectations by never paying that off.
Yeah, they're just the big brains, the real big brains here. But yeah, where can people find Overly Sarcastic Productions and your content? Where can people follow you?
Well, predominantly on YouTube. Quick search of that will get you the channel. A lot of fun stuff. We got various playlists for trope talks and history and myths and legends and all that jazz. So if those are your speed, those are a thing. We also sometimes I'll hijack the channel and do like let's plays and stuff, but that's fine. Just don't worry about it. And I am at present still on Twitter, where I used to do like live tweet watch-alongs of movies sometimes, including Lightning Thief and Sea of Monsters a while back. I don't remember when exactly, but they're up there somewhere. But changes that happened within the last like 24 hours have made that significantly harder to find. And I guess at time of release, there's no guarantee that Twitter will still exist. So maybe don't bank on that one.
Awesome.
Awesome. Definitely check them out, listeners. Hannah, do you want to?
Yes. Well, you can also find Not My Fantasy on YouTube. If you're watching Hi Hello, you can
Smash that like button.
hit the like button.
The bell notification.
The bell notification. All the other weird things you gotta do to just like get notified. And leave us a comment. If you read the book, what is your least favorite change they made? Because I like that. Because hearing what happens in the book, I'm like, okay, I can see good foundation. And then I see the movie and I'm like, weird. So yeah, let us know what you think about that. And then also find us on iTunes. Give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you love about the podcast. And yeah.
Yeah.
You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Not My Fantasy Pod.
Yes. And listeners, we will see you then.
Yeah. Bye.